With an almost inaudible light step, Bella headed to meet her dear father, whose company she could not fully enjoy after a long separation. The girl was filled with joy that her father had finally called her to him, and she was very interested in the question for what reason. Bella herself didn't notice how she soon switched from a walk to a run, wanting to see her father as soon as possible. Already approaching the door, the thought flashed through the girl's head that this invitation to her father might be connected with the fact that it was her birthday tomorrow. With these joyful thoughts, Bella pulled the handle and opened the door, behind which she expected to find much joy today. She started to greet her father upon entering, but her speech was cut short when Bella saw that Anthony Morgan was not alone in the room. With some completely indifferent tone and clearly not filled with paternal love, Anthony said, apparently addressing his guest, who was comfortably seated in an armchair, that the child had arrived. The already alarmed girl asked her father what was happening here, mentally wondering what kind of person was in the room with her father at such a late hour. But suddenly, Anthony grabbed Bella's hand with all his might and pulled her towards him, causing the girl to scream. And the mysterious guest, sitting in the chair with a slight smile, watched what was happening without interfering. And suddenly he spoke, noting that this was a very lovely child, and he would be very sorry to use her as a sacrifice. The word victim spoken by an unknown man resounded in the girl's ears with thunder and genuine horror. With tears in her eyes and trembling with fear and horror, Bella asked her father what was happening here now. But Edward, as if not hearing at all what his daughter was saying and squeezing her small body even tighter with his hands, answered the man that if this could help the cardinal, then he would not back down from his decision. Feeling the hopelessness of the situation, the girl screamed heart-rendingly, but neither her scream nor her attempts to escape from her father's hands were successful. So, on the night before Bella's 12th birthday, she was betrayed and abandoned by the one whom she loved with all her heart and waited for a very long time, her own father. 6 long years have passed since that day. Screaming about where she came from here, the man forcefully pushed the girl, causing her to hit the wall and sit on the ground. At that same moment, the girl's little maid jumped out between the offender and his victim and screamed at the top of her voice that they should not touch her mistress. But the main offender and his minions just laughed, saying that such a trifle had no place here at all. Holding the little maid who was protecting her close to her, the girl said that the men should not think of harming them, since her father was the Marquis of the Northern Lands. But the attackers did not believe this, saying that the daughter of the Marquis would definitely not walk around in such a place, and in their turbulent time with only one little maid accompanied. And their obvious leader, taking the girl by the chin and lifting her face, said that she was very pretty, and therefore she could be sold at a higher price. Fearing for the fate of her mistress, the little maid rushed into her arms, shouting for the offenders to leave them alone. But this only provoked the men, who concluded out loud that the baby could also be sold profitably to those who love perversion. And so the leader of the group took active action, grabbing the girl by the hand and saying that she would better go with him on good terms. The shameless man did not even notice how a new participant in this scene appeared behind him. With one quick movement of his hand, the stranger grabbed the offender by the head and with all his strength literally slammed his face into the masonry of the wall. Before he even had time to understand what had happened, the gang leader, in front of his henchmen, was coughing up the blood flowing from his broken face. He turned sharply in the direction where the unknown man who had interfered with his actions was located and began to hurl curses at him. But not a single word he said provoked any reaction from this visitor, whose face was hidden by a scarf. The girl, also without saying a word, looked enthusiastically at her savior. And so the man, clearly thirsty for revenge, rushed towards the one who interfered with his lucrative deal to sell girls. Believing that his opponent's triumph over him was an accident, since the latter attacked from behind, the man tried to strike him with his hand, which, however, the stranger dodged quite easily. And then, without waiting for any further actions from the attacker, the savior grabbed the gang leader by the head and dropped him with all his might. The blow was so strong that the stone path became covered with cracks, and the failed kidnapper of the girls was finally neutralized. Having finished with the leader, the stranger cast a sharp glance at his henchmen standing nearby, who did not tempt fate, and having taken their defeated leader, hastily retreated from the battlefield. And the girls, continuing to sit, silently watched the winner of this confrontation. The little maid was the first to speak, asking the stranger whether he had any intentions of selling him and his mistress. But without answering the girl's question, the savior, revealing his face, asked if everything was okay with the girls. But the lady was clearly in some kind of stupor from the events that had taken place, and, without waiting for an answer to the question, the stranger offered to accompany the girls in order to avoid a repetition of such situations. After a short period of time, the entire newly formed company was already at home. The little maid could not believe her eyes, looking at all the dishes with which the table was simply overflowing and getting ready to have a hearty dinner. And her mistress looked with tenderness at how appetizingly the girl devoured one dish after another. Then, turning to her rescuer, the girl said that she was grateful to Mr. White for his hospitality, to which he immediately replied that he did not really expect the girls to go with him. But the guest immediately expressed her lack of understanding of what was said, recalling that the man himself invited them to his place. However, Mr. White countered this by saying that just going with some stranger like that was the height of stupidity, to which the girl innocently replied that they were no longer strangers, since they introduced themselves to each other, and if the man forgot, then she reminds her that her name is Bella Morgan. But the man was adamant, objecting to what was said by saying that knowing their names does not make them truly familiar people. After all that had been said, there was an awkward pause, during which Bella and Nicholas White gave each other blank looks. The girl was the first to speak after this pause, expressing her assumption that with these words the man wanted to hint that it was time for girls to know the honor. But Nicholas immediately replied that Bella misunderstood him. These were just thoughts out loud, and she shouldn't pay attention to it. To which the simple-minded little maid Evie said that the man himself first put them in an awkward position with his words, and now he is turning everything in the opposite direction. In response to what the maid said, Bella reprimanded her and was about to continue her meal. But suddenly, Nicholas remembered what the girl had said, that she was the daughter of a duke, and said that he had never heard that he had a daughter. And the girl, without any hesitation, answered that officially the Marquis does not have a daughter, but those who need it know about her existence. What Bella voiced gave rise to the thoughts in Nicholas's head that this girl could be the illegitimate daughter of the Marquis, an illegitimate child. And then the man said that in this case the girl should return home, which caused an exclamation of surprise from her. Nicholas explained that he, of course, is not aware of all the events, but life in the capital is much more chaotic, and what happened today could easily repeat itself. And then, looking closely at Bella, he added that she was very striking because she had a very beautiful appearance. The girl never expected to hear such direct words, and the man continued that because of her appearance, she would constantly be the subject of attention, since the more beautiful the girl, the more profitably she can be sold. Where in such cases, criminals always quickly find accomplices who are attracted by a substantial jackpot. Looking at Nicholas, Bella asked if he would demand some kind of payment from them for salvation and for shelter and food, to which the man did not find an answer, since he was completely discouraged by what the girl said and decided that he simply scared her very much. Suddenly, without saying a word, he rose from his seat and headed towards the table. Bella was also silent, waiting for developments and interested in what her savior would do next. But contrary to all expectations, once at the table, Nicholas suddenly took out a dagger and placed it next to the girl. Frightened, Bella asked what this was for, to which she immediately received an answer from the man that it was for her safety. And while the girl picked up and examined the offering, Nicholas told the girl to use this item if necessary. Taking the weapon from the girl's hands, the man said that even he was no exception in this situation, and she should stick a dagger into him in case he suddenly approaches her with some dirty thoughts. Leaving the dagger in the turkey and finishing his speech, Nicholas headed out of the room. Bella looked confused, first after the leaving man, then turned her gaze to the dagger, which remained sticking out of the smoked turkey carcass. And suddenly the girl laughed, saying that Nicholas did too. Not understanding either the essence of Bella's reaction or what the words spoken to her might mean, the man turned around and asked what she meant. Giving the man the kindest and most gentle look, Bella said that she also found Nicholas a very attractive man. The man did not expect to hear such an answer and literally opened his mouth in surprise. He stood and looked at the smiling girl, not knowing what to say or how to react to what he said to her. In complete confusion, Nicholas thought about why the girl suddenly started talking about his attractiveness, and the only thought that came to his bright head was that the girl might have some kind of mental disorder or be mentally retarded. Dinner was over, and all the current inhabitants of this home had long been in their beds. Bella's sleep was interrupted by the feeling that someone was approaching her, and the girl opened her eyes. Directly in front of her, she saw Nicholas looming over her, who, pressing his index finger to his lips, gave her a sign to be quiet. Looking in confusion at her yesterday's savior, who was now doing something unclear, Bella asked if this was the case when she needed to stick a dagger in a man. But Nicholas suddenly pulled the girl by the hand, telling her to immediately hide under the bed and sit there quietly. But seeing her confusion, he pulled Bella's hand a little harder and asked her to hurry up. And a moment later, the door to the room swung open sharply, where the same gang leader, whom Nicholas, defending the girls, had fought back yesterday, appeared in the doorway with a victorious exclamation. Having positioned himself in the middle of the room and enlisting the support of not only his henchmen, but also some military man, the kidnapper of the girls unceremoniously asked Nicholas the question of where he had taken his loot, where the next immediate demand was to return to him those girls who by right belonged to him. But Nicholas replied in a completely calm tone that the man was apparently delirious, and it was better for him to leave his home in an amicable way. Clearly feeling some kind of superiority over his opponent, the kidnapper of the girls grinned slyly, clenching some object tighter in his fist. Saying that now he would regret interfering in his affairs, the kidnapper suddenly quickly pulled out a knife and ran the tip of the blade across his hand. Nicholas couldn't believe his eyes, but his thoughts were already forming an answer to what was happening now. Meanwhile, the blood oozing from the kidnapper's hand sprinkled the stone clutched in his palm, and the hieroglyphs carved on it began to emit a glow. The entire room was shrouded in white fog, in which someone's silhouette began to be visible. Having already realized what the kidnapper had done, Nicholas shouted to him in anger that he was a real madman. After all, this stupid man has just summoned a monster, one of those that live in the world of the dead, to solve his problems. Realizing that a fight was inevitable, Nicholas grabbed his sword, adopting a defensive position, and the summoned monster immediately began its attack. Shielding himself with the black blade of his sword, Nicholas stopped the beast's throw, after which he threw him back with force, to the very place from where this monster appeared. And at that very moment, Bella appeared between the beast and the man, who loudly shouted for the battle to be stopped. But Nicholas quickly left the girl behind him, rushing towards the beast, which was starting a new attack. And while he restrained the monster, the one who summoned him stood and laughed at what was happening in the room, saying that the girl should not have been so naive. But Bella replied that all those who started this violence are naive, and if now the men don't come to their senses and stop it, then she won't be able to forgive them for this. To which the kidnapper said that the girl clearly had some problems with her head. At this moment, the monster called for disassembly suddenly focused its attention on Bella, and having bypassed its opponent in the person of Nicholas, the undead sharply rushed at the girl. The man did not even have time to react to what had happened, and only a cry of despair escaped from his throat, where, a second after the beast jumped, blood sprayed like a fountain in all directions. Stunned, Nicholas stood with his eyes and mouth wide open, silently watching the bloody performance, during which not only blood scattered in all directions, but also the head of the monster, separated from the body, flew somewhere to the side, after which Bella appeared to Nicholas's gaze, completing her graceful movement with her hand gripping the hilt of the dagger, which was the reason for the separation of the monster's head from the body. This sight, combining the beauty of the girl and the horror of the blood dripping from the blade of the dagger and the head of the beast lying on the floor, was truly terribly beautiful. Neither the kidnapper and his henchmen nor Nicholas could believe that this fragile-looking girl had just dealt with such a monster with one easy movement. And Bella, meanwhile, smiling sweetly, said that she saw and understood the surprise of the men, concluding her short speech with a reminder that she had already noted their naivety. Suddenly, with the stone that the girl's kidnapper continued to clutch in his hand, what began to happen? Of course, the man felt this and saw some kind of glow begin to emanate from his palm. He threw the stone away, but the glow did not stop. It turns out that it did not come from the stone, but from his palm, from which his consciousness and appearance began to change dramatically. And now he was already standing in front of the participants in the recent events in the room in a new guise, where his eyes were exactly the same as those of the undead defeated by Bella. At the same moment, the recent kidnapper, who had suddenly turned into a monster, sank his teeth into the body of one of his henchmen. Bella turned her gaze indifferently to what was happening literally a couple of meters from her, but without missing a second, she headed in the direction where the reincarnated kidnapper was attacking his companion. Seeing the approaching girl, the newly made monster threw away its random victim and rushed at Bella. But with some incredibly fast movement, the girl stopped this attack by striking the new undead with the back of the dagger's hilt on the back of the head, which made the monster fall to the floor, unconscious, like a sack of potatoes. The henchmen of this man, defeated by the girl, watched all this action from the sidelines, which meanwhile turned to them and said that for this reason you shouldn't grab anything and do something you don't know anything about. Bella immediately squatted down in front of the man she had defeated and voiced the question of where this narrow-minded man got the sacrificial stone. Having not heard an answer to the question posed, the girl turned to the kidnapper's henchmen and asked them about what was unclear in the question asked. The one who almost became a victim of his boss stood up and explained that about 3 months ago, their boss said that he had found him. Picking up a stone from the floor, the girl stated out loud that this meant it happened by accident. And fully erect, Bella announced that she would confiscate the sacrificial stone. And immediately turning to the men, the girl said that now they would have to answer for what they had done, which had already led them to bewilderment. At that moment, Bella's little maid appeared from under the bed, where she had been hiding all this time. Kneading her numb hands, Evie said in a cold tone that her mistakes can always be corrected, after which the girl extended her palms forward towards the men, who were literally squeezed into a corner. I don't know what other surprises could be expected from the seemingly little girl after what she had already seen. But without shocking the already frightened men with anything else, Evie simply told them to immediately give her everything they had in their pockets. It was already getting light outside when the uninvited guests were robbed and escorted out of the house, and little Evie was finishing cleaning the room. Shocked by what he saw no less than the uninvited guests, Nicholas asked the girl whether her weakness was a game, to which Bella replied that she did not understand what he was talking about. The girl explained that she never presented herself as weak, but simply followed the basic rules of etiquette. But the man continued to stick to his line, saying that allowing himself to be taken away by a gang of crooks somehow didn't seem like good manners. Bella and Evie looked at each other before returning their gaze to the man. The little maid was the first to speak, saying that everyone needed this, both the girls and the kidnappers. Then Bella supported her words, saying that they somehow needed to cover travel expenses, which Evie immediately continued, saying that this was payment for their work in rehabilitating the kidnappers. After listening to everything that was said, Nicholas indignantly said that all this was just some kind of robbery and nothing more. Hanging her head, the girl sadly said that of all the possible words, for some reason the man chose this offensive word, robbery. And then the man suddenly realized that, in fact, this girl had never asked him or anyone else for help. Moreover, when he offered the girl a weapon, she was not very keen to take it. He himself insisted, saying that if necessary, she could stick the dagger into him too. From these thoughts, the man literally began to boil inside, cursing himself out loud for interfering in the first place. This attracted the girl's attention, and she asked if she had heard correctly the words that she had intervened in vain, to which the man said that he didn't mean it that way. But Bella had already changed the subject, holding out her hand with the sacrificial stone and saying that this was a much more important topic of conversation, since she knew about the search for this stone by the man produced. Sacrificial stones appeared in their world about a century ago, and these objects were dangerous because with their help, it became possible to literally open the doors to hell, to the world of the dead. On the way to the capital, Nicholas learned that one of these stones was in this city and conducted an investigation into this matter. Lowering his eyes, Nicholas said that the girl was right, but noted to himself that she was very insightful, and he should not have considered her naive and stupid. And Bella said that the stone now belongs to her, which creates interest in the man's actions, where he can either come to terms with it or try to take away what he needs. To which Nicholas answered, without thinking, that the sacrificial stone, of course, is an important thing for him, but in no case is he going to take it away by force. At first, Bella listened with surprise to everything that the man said, and then, smiling good-naturedly, she said that she thought so, because Mr. White really seemed very nice to her. Such words came as a complete surprise to Nicholas, and he froze, not knowing how to respond. And the girl, standing up, said that it was not in vain that the man intervened, since although she did not need to be saved, kindness would definitely not hurt her at all. After which Bella approached Nicholas and placed a sacrificial stone in his palm, saying that this was her gratitude for the man's kindness and participation. This act of the girl again led the man into complete bewilderment, where he simply stood and looked at what no other person would ever give away for nothing. But finally, having collected his thoughts, Nicholas replied that on the one hand he accepts the gift, but since the gift is too valuable, he remains in Bella's debt and will repay her when and how she wishes. The delighted girl said that she was also happy with this outcome, after which she asked whether the man was heading to the palace now. But, anticipating the girl's proposal, Nicholas said that he could not become her companion, since he already had many accompanying people. Such a statement from the man caused the girl a considerable feeling of surprise, and, of course, upset her a little, where Bella mentally said that she wouldn't mind finding out what he's doing, since he has so many companions. Out loud, the girl, without betraying her emotions, said that in this case they would have a chance to meet in the palace. With a very pleased expression on his face, Nicholas said that he would be only too happy about this. After some time, the new acquaintances dispersed in different directions, where Nicholas soon approached the tent camp. Having gone into one of the tents, he laid out the treasured trophy on the table, for the sake of which he made this foray. And his simple attire was immediately replaced by a luxurious robe, decorated with fur, where the knights immediately greeted their master, congratulating him on his successful return. When asked how the investigation went, Nicholas replied that the sacrificial stone was used by robbers to commit crimes. Carrying out the instructions of his duke, his closest assistant Felton loudly announced that their goal had been achieved in just 2 days, and they could now return to the capital. Meanwhile, Nicholas had already managed to jump on his horse, and after very little time, which it took to get ready, he was already leading his people towards the capital. On the way, he remembered Bella and the girl's words addressed to him that he was very sweet. With a smile on his face and the most pleasant sensations, Nicholas mentally concluded that the girl herself was a very sweet creature. On the other hand, the man saw Bella as very strange, where she first pretends to be helpless and then simply robs people. And finally, Nicholas came to the conclusion that, along with all the qualities already noted, this girl is very honest. Having finished reflecting on the qualities of his new acquaintance, Nicholas wondered how she might react to the fact that he was the Duke of the Southern Lands. The man's thoughts were interrupted by Felton, who asked his master that something good had clearly happened to the latter. However, the Duke was in no hurry to confess, and asked his first assistant why he came to this opinion. To which Felton immediately replied that this was evident from the gentleman's very good mood and the frequent smile on his face. But still, the question was left unanswered. But after a short time, Nicholas himself suddenly addressed his assistant by name, to which he immediately replied that he was at the disposal of the Duke. And the man asked Felton if he knew anything about Morgan having a daughter, to which Felton asked whether the Duke meant the Marquis of the Northern Lands. The Duke confirmed his assistant's guess, and he said that the Marquis really had a daughter, but she died many years ago. And in response to the immediate question about what her name was, the assistant said that it seemed like Isabel or Bella, but he didn't know for sure. After falling silent, Nicholas noted that all of this certainly couldn't be just a coincidence. He only mistook her for the illegitimate child of the Marquis, and she turned out to be dead. Deciding that yesterday he saw the ghost of Isabel Morgan, Nicholas decided that at the next meeting he would definitely find out all the details. He spurred his horse, picking up speed, as did his entire army. At the same time, a modest carriage was slowly rolling along one of the roads leading to the capital. Inside, Bella looked thoughtfully at the landscapes flashing outside the carriage window. The voice of the little maid, who voiced her thoughts that it is not often possible to meet such a decent and honest young man as Nicholas, attracted the girl's attention. Remembering the details of this gentleman's appearance, Evie wondered aloud what this man might be doing. For a split second, Bella also thought about what type of activity might be most characteristic of Nicholas. And imagining his very pleasant facial features, the girl said that at the next meeting she would definitely find out. And the little maid had already changed the subject, asking her mistress what she would do when she met her father in the palace. To which Bella, after thinking a little, replied that she would first say hello, ask how he was doing, and then give him a chance. Not quite understanding what the last point meant, Evie asked if the lady was going to give her father a chance, and Bella answered without hesitation that this would be a chance to ask her for forgiveness. Until the age of 6, Bella lived completely alone in one of the suburban estates. On the advice of more experienced aristocrats, Bella's mother, the wife of a viscount, was to distance herself from her daughter in order to focus on raising her newborn son, who was to become the family's heir. That's why the little girl was constantly surrounded by loneliness. All she could do was look at the portrait of her parents, dreaming of the day when she could meet them. Little Bella often talked to this portrait, saying that she missed her parents very much. And then one day, the maid told Bella that a letter had arrived from the main estate demanding that she return home. This was the best thing the girl could hear, and she returned home full of joy. Experiencing the most pleasant sensations, the little girl went to this long-awaited meeting with her parents. And as if the parents, whom she had never seen, who had come to life from a painting and warmly greeted their daughter, seemed to her the most beautiful people in the whole world. Following all the necessary ceremonies, Bella curtsied and greeted her parents, calling herself Bella Morgan. The girl believed that from that moment on, every day of her life would be filled with nothing but happiness. All these events of the past flashed through Bella's head more and more often as she approached the place where she would meet her father. and once again, the little maid distracted her mistress from not the most pleasant memories, saying that they were already approaching. And indeed, through the carriage window, one could already see the capital and the imperial palace, bursting with luxury. Life on the streets of the capital was in full swing, manifesting itself in the people who did not know grief, filling its streets. Meanwhile, in order to get inside, it was necessary to stand in a considerable queue, since a lot of people arrived today. Evie, leaning out the window and assessing the size of the queue, concluded that they would only get inside when night fell. But Bella said that they did not need to stand in line and asked the maid to find an invitation. Fulfilling her mistress's request, Evie immediately rushed to look for the treasured envelope, which was supposed to help them get rid of the need to waste time waiting for their turn. And very soon the little maid took out that very envelope, sealed with a seal. Without thinking twice, Evie extended the invitation to a guard standing nearby. And as soon as he saw the seal, the guard immediately apologized to the girls and gave instructions to let their carriage skip the line. Soon the travelers were already in the chambers allotted to them, where the little maid only had time to marvel at the luxury of the imperial palace. In just a matter of seconds, she examined everything that was possible in their room. But noticing that her mistress was clearly examining her appearance, the girl asked where she was going to go, to which Bella replied that she wanted to go to meet her father. Evie expressed her doubts about this, saying that the girl was just on the road and was not ready, to which Bella immediately replied that no special ceremonies were needed to meet her parents. After which the girl turned around and headed towards the exit. She said that she would just go and see her father. But, having reached the desired door, Bella realized that she would not be able to simply meet her father, since the guards blocked her path, saying that she would not be able to go there. Instead, one of the guards produced and handed Bella a letter from their master. Having unfolded it, the girl read only one sentence, where it was said that she should not even dare to use her father's loss. Having finished reading, the girl once again turned to the guards, asking them to tell them that Bella Morgan was very insistent on meeting. But the guards, without moving from their place, still said that the girl needed to leave. But suddenly, an exclamation was heard from the side, where the approaching man said that the girl should not rush. Turning her head, Bella saw her family's butler, Carl, approaching her. And so, a few minutes later, the butler and Bella were sitting opposite each other in one of the rooms. With the hope that the man remembered her, the girl asked how he had been all this time. But Carl suddenly said sharply that it was completely impermissible for the girl to impersonate a long-dead person. Surprised, Bella exclaimed that it was really her and asked why the butler didn't recognize her. As proof, the girl recalled to the man events from the past, where she kept slipping on the steps of the stairs. And in order to protect the little lady, the butler covered the stairs with a carpet, which then made the girl very happy, and she was sincerely grateful to the man for this. But Carl again did not believe the girl, asking where she heard about it. And then, rising from his seat, Carl said that if only the girl had imagined how much his master grieved over the death of his daughter, then she would never have decided to impersonate her. At that moment, one of the servants delivered tea, and the man said that since the girl had arrived, he should treat her to a drink, after which she should leave and no longer try to disturb the marquis. Saying that he would prepare the tea himself, Carl ordered the servant to leave. Turning his back to the girl, the man suddenly stuck his hand into his inner pocket, from which he took out a small gold-plated bottle. Thinking that the poor lady should not have returned here at all, Carl poured the poison into a mug of tea. Then he placed the mug on the table in front of the guest. Bella had long understood everything that was happening now and looked into Carl's eyes without any emotion. Then, looking at the mug of poisoned tea, the girl concluded that not a single word of hers here, apparently, would be accepted normally. And when Bella raised the mug, Carl sadly noted to himself that that was all. Soon the girl's life would be interrupted. Bella, holding a mug with a deadly drink, asked to tell her father that she was inquiring about his health. But after thinking for a second, she suddenly asked Carl what would happen if suddenly she was found dead tomorrow. These words completely discouraged the man, where it seemed to him that the girl saw through his plan. But immediately saying that she asked just like that, the girl drank the entire contents of the mug. Placing the mug on the table, Bella quickly walked away, leaving a final note to the butler that they would meet again. Soon, Bella literally burst into her chambers, taking her little maid by surprise. The girl rushed straight to the wash basin, thereby provoking Evie to question whether everything was all right with her mistress. Without answering the maid's question, Bella, having completed the simple procedure of extracting most of the poison by emptying her stomach, sat down on the floor. She said that she had taken poison, some of which had managed to get into her blood, which made her weak, and therefore she needed help to get up. And to the question of Evie, who rushed to her, Bella said that the poison was given to her by the person dearest to her, which means she could not refuse to take it. It was a quiet and very strong poison that paralyzes the entire body, where a person cannot even make an effort to take a simple breath of air. And suddenly the girl, for no apparent reason, burst into loud laughter. This behavior greatly frightened the little maid, who asked if this was part of the effect of the poison, to which the girl replied that she was fine. But what made her laugh was that instead of her father, the butler came out to talk to her and bully her. Showing Evie a letter from her father, Bella said that she had come such a long way, but was awarded only this pathetic piece of paper, but with a touching text. Having familiarized herself with the contents of the paper, the maid said that if these lines could cause anything, it would only be anger, which made her mistress laugh. Where Bella explained that the words paternal loss means a wound, and this could very well mean that he regrets what he did, and therefore she really wants to believe that, at least in some small amount, the father will be able to feel guilty before his daughter. But the little maid continued, not believing that her mistress really believed these words, to which Bella immediately replied that at first she was confused by these words, but then she heard poison being poured into her mug of tea, and suddenly the girl laughed again, saying that you should have seen how pale the butler turned when she told him of her possible death. But the little maid was indignant, saying that the poison could not be swallowed, since it was a real threat to life. But Bella replied that they all tried so hard, and she simply could not help but drink it. And besides, she was definitely not in danger of dying from this poison. But Evie objected again, saying that even if her mistress did not die, the pain would still not go away. Bella said nothing to the maid's words, and she sat down next to her. Lowering her small head onto the girl's shoulder, Evie said that tomorrow the Bela poisoners would most likely come to check on her condition, to which Bella replied that in this case she should be the first to pay a visit, and Evie immediately said that after this they would definitely send a killer to her. The fear was justified, and the little maid said that she would sleep with her mistress just in case. And when Bella tried to object, Evie said that she should also be pitied, since she was essentially still a very small child. The night turned out to be restless for the girl. Her whole body was burning. Her insides were hurting because of the poison that she had taken inside. Realizing that she wouldn't be able to fall asleep, the girl got up and went to the window of her room. In the house opposite, music was playing loudly and the fun was in full swing. With sadness, the girl noted that if her father had not sold her, she could now have fun at this ball and be among her own people. And suddenly, in one easy movement, the girl jumped over the railing of her balcony and carefully landed on the lawn near the house. Heading into the garden, she remembered that night gardens are rightfully considered one of the best places for secret dates. And suddenly she felt someone approaching her from behind. Bela immediately remembered the words of her little maid that next time they would send a murderer to her. Ready for anything, the girl quickly turned around, striking with her hand, and froze in place, as she saw in front of her someone whom she had not expected to see at all. Protecting himself from the movement of the girl's hand, Nicholas White looked at the surprised Bella. In surprise, Bella exclaimed loudly, calling the man by name, after which she added that she completely forgot to take with her the security measure the man had previously presented to her, to which Nicholas immediately replied that this was not necessary now. This whole situation made the girl laugh a lot, not expecting such an unexpected meeting on a night walk. She noted that their meeting occurred much earlier than expected, with which the man completely agreed. Looking at Nicholas's appearance, Bella noted that in this short period of time during which they had not seen each other, the man had changed a lot. Without commenting in any way on what the girl said, Nicholas asked what the girl was doing at such a late hour in the garden, where he immediately received the answer that she wanted to take a walk. And to a similar question from Bella, he replied that he also decided to take a night walk. While the man was answering, his attention was drawn to what his random encounter was wearing, where he noted that this was the second time he had seen a girl in sleepwear. Without thinking twice, Nicholas took off his outerwear and threw it over the girl's shoulders. Such kindness and care on the part of a man towards an unfamiliar girl looked very sweet to Bella. While they were walking through the park, Nicholas asked if the girl had met her father, but instead of answering, he was addressed with a counter-question about what it was on his part, real keen interest or some kind of verification, to which the man replied that he had already heard how rudely they treated Bella by not letting her into the marquise, and the girl immediately said that in that case, Nicholas already knew everything, and she had nothing to add. Continuing to carry on the conversation, the man asked for what purpose Bella was seeking a meeting with Marquis Morgan. But the resourceful girl cunningly avoided answering, saying that the man was somehow strangely interested in her affairs, where at the same time he did not talk about himself at all. To this, Nicholas replied that he belongs to the eastern lands, and the girl's father belongs to the northern ones, where it is no secret that relations between the east and the north are, to put it mildly, strained. It was precisely this circumstance that the man explained his silence, so as not to create discomfort for the girl. After listening to everything that was said, Bella noted to herself that Nicholas's concealment of his identity, as it turned out, was not accidental, but was done for the sake of her peace of mind. Smiling imperceptibly, the girl said that she just wanted to exist. It is for this reason that she seeks to meet her father, Anthony Morgan. Because at present it does not officially exist in this world, and for all these people. After all, her death is a much more natural and simple thing than the fact that she will suddenly be alive. It was for this reason that she came to have her father take on this responsibility. But so far it has turned out that he, not only responsibility, did not even want to meet his resurrected daughter. Listening to Bella's story, Nicholas noted that under ordinary circumstances, sensitive people are gentle in character, while strong people are cold. But this girl somehow unimaginably combined tenderness and perseverance. The walk continued, where Nicholas suddenly said that if the father still did not want to recognize and accept the girl, then she would always be welcome in the East, for which he was immediately grateful. But Bella immediately added that at first she considered the man a small pawn, alone looking for the sacrificial stone, but now she sees that the man's position is much higher. And the girl finished her speech by saying that it would be better for her to address the man by the title of Duke at their next meeting. Noting to himself that the girl was indeed very perceptive, Nicholas said that in the presence of others she should address him that way. But then he asked a counter-question about how he should address the girl at their next meeting, to which Bella replied that in front of others you should call her a lady, but when they are one-on-one, a man can simply call her by her name. After thinking for a while, Nicholas suddenly said that he quite often walks at night to get some fresh air. Not understanding anything, the girl asked him why the man had said this at all, to which Nicholas replied, not without a hint of irony, that he said it just like that. Bella supported this game, saying that this was a very good coincidence, since she also really loves night walks. Charles handed Edward Morgan a letter, saying that it had been sent at dawn today. Having printed it out, the Marquis read the lines written by Bella, where she said that he was probably curious why she was looking for a meeting with him after so many years, but she was also curious to know the reason why he did this to her. Therefore, if he explains to her the reason, then she too will satisfy the Marquis's curiosity and show everything that she is capable of. Having finished reading the letter, Edward asked the butler what happened, to which Carl replied that the poison was the most powerful, but by some miracle the girl survived. The Marquis immediately said that he had no doubts about Carl's actions, since he knew about his scrupulousness, and the butler replied that he would sort everything out, and this time there would be no mistake. Then one of the maids entered the room, who said that she had information of interest to the master, where Bella Morgan was invited here by the Duke of the Southern Lands himself. This greatly shocked Edward, who did not expect that his late daughter was summoned to the capital by one of the most influential people in the world. Carl said that if she was the honored guest of such an influential person, then it becomes incomprehensible why she arrived without any accompaniment, to which the Marquis himself explained that the girl was probably just testing the waters with her sudden appearance, and just wanted to know his reaction to it. Since she was a guest of the South, all the actions of the Marquis of the North are nothing more than an insult that cannot be tolerated and which can become a reason for complaint. Thinking through all this, Edward said that during all the time that they had not seen each other, Bella had become much smarter. At the same time, actions took place in that part of the palace where the Duke of the South, Louis Sanders, was stationed with his retinue and army. Opening the doors to the Duke's office, Evie loudly announced that she and her mistress had arrived, and Bella, as soon as she went inside, immediately inquired from the Duke about whether he slept well last night, to which the man replied that his night never ceases to amaze. Where Bella did not notify him of her arrival, but instead immediately went to visit the Marquis of the North Morgan. Bella replied that she had nothing to say to this, and all she could do was ask the Duke for forgiveness. However, Duke Sanders said that he was not concerned about the apology, but about the answer to a completely different question, namely, why one of the highest-paid mercenaries turned out to be a girl. For several centuries in a row, there was a war in the South with the dead that filled those lands. The war was called silent because the dead, usually staggering slowly on the ground, responded to sound, where it was enough even to simply stick a sword into the ground. how these devilish creatures immediately activated and began to attack the person. The Duke of the South also took part in this endless battle with the dead, where at some point he realized that there was almost nothing left of his army, which means a quick defeat in this confrontation is inevitable. But suddenly, a man in armor appeared on the field, who did not look particularly impressive and gave the impression that he was actually a child. The dead surrounded this warrior in the blink of an eye, and there was no longer any hope of salvation. This warrior showed his abilities to the fullest, defeating the hordes of the dead and winning that battle and war. But no one could even think that this powerful and unsurpassed warrior would be a girl, so the Duke was interested in the question of whether this was a real appearance. Bella, after listening to the Duke's memories, simply remained silent for some time, after which she said that she had never pretended to be a man, and Evie added that her mistress only put on clothes that were comfortable for a particular occasion, and Louis mentally concluded that the girl had never really introduced herself to him as a man. Bella continued, apologizing for surprising the Duke so much, but immediately added that her gender does not negate her skills and qualities. After all, in the end, it was not a man who was invited, but a specific person with specific merits. Then Louis asked the girl to explain for what purpose she was looking for a meeting with the Marquis of the Serverlands, and Bella immediately explained that she is his daughter, who complicates his life with her existence. To this, the Duke said that he saw the complexity of this story and would no longer ask the girl about it. Bella addressed the man with words of gratitude for understanding a truly strange and difficult situation. The man said that the North wouldn't just leave it like that, and Bella needed to figure out what to do next. To which she immediately replied that she sincerely counted on the protection of the South. Lowering his eyes, the Duke said that such defense would be tantamount to open hostility with the North. But Bella said that this was not an attack, but only protection of the weak. And the Duke agreed to provide protection for the girl, but also said that if danger arose for the entire South, this could radically change matters. Thanks to the man, the girl said that she would always remember this, and with her victories would prove her loyalty to the South. Thanks to one of the emperors of the past, the kingdom was again revived from the ruins, where the center of the revived kingdom became its capital, where the emperor himself was located. All other lands surrounding it were divided into north, south, west, and east, where each descendant of the imperial family received his own inheritance. The eastern lands were led by the illegitimate son of the previous duke, Nicholas White, who could not claim to bear the name Doherty, which only members of the imperial family could have due to his origins. The Duke of the Western Lands, Mordecai Frey Doherty, who was defeated in the war, moved to the capital and lived there as a cardinal. The Duke of the South was Louis Sanders, who until recently endured a war with the dead and, with the help of a mercenary, won it, miraculously surviving. The Duke of the North became the war-winning Vincent McGrath Doherty, the eldest son of the Duke who died in the war. The conflicts accumulated over the years of war gave rise to deep personal hostility and enmity between the lands. The Cardinal, as well as the Dukes of the North and South, were already gathered in the audience. The Cardinal turned to Louis, asking what happened last night with the girl and the Marquis of the North. And when the Duke asked what it was about, Mordecai replied that information had reached him that he was using some girl to annoy Edward. The Northern Duke immediately made his contribution, saying that only the rootless could afford to use such methods, since it was very low. To which the Duke of the South immediately replied that the North should have thought about the fact that all this was done on purpose, so that the child would be recognized as quickly as possible. But Vincent stuck to his line, saying that now he is not interested in whether this was done on purpose or by accident. He is interested in why the South commits actions that can shake the mood of the North. Louis was not at all happy with this tone of conversation, and he struck the table with his palm and said menacingly that the insolence of the North saw no boundaries. The Cardinal tried to defuse the situation, saying that he was surprised by the behavior of the Duke of the South, who previously would not have paid attention to what was said. And then, changing the subject, the Cardinal asked why no one invited the Eastern Duke to the negotiations, to which Louis immediately blurted out that this illegitimate creature should not be here at all, in which Vincent fully supported him, and Mordecai sat pleased that he had so successfully managed to change the subject. But suddenly, with a strong kick, someone opened the door to the room where the rulers of the lands were meeting. The whole trio stared in bewilderment in the direction from which the sound of the blow came, where Nicholas entered the room, holding in one hand one of those who refused to tell him the place of the meeting. Saying that he had finally found them, the man literally threw the young guy in front of him onto the floor. After which, Nicholas turned to those present with a question whether they had ordered this young man not to reveal the location of the meeting. Without answering the question, the cardinal said that the Eastern Duke had arrived just in time. Well, Nicholas responded to this by saying that the mice at their secret meeting squeak so loudly that it can be heard on the other side of the city, which allowed him to find them. After which the man, crushing the poor guy with his foot, asked what was so interesting they were discussing here without him. Nicholas's behavior greatly offended the meeting participants, and the Duke of the South was the first to speak out, noting that the Duke of the East should learn some good manners. To which Nicholas, sitting down at the table and throwing his legs on it, said that the pathetic mice who had arranged a secret meeting did not dare teach him manners. These words completely enraged Louis, who mentally covered the Eastern Duke from head to toe with all the abusive words that were known to him. Meanwhile, the Duke of the North suddenly said that he did not intend to tolerate this rudeness any longer and was taking his leave first. The Duke of the South immediately followed his example, saying that he was also returning to his place. Following the Dukes of the North and South, the cardinal also left the room, saying that Nicholas had appeared very impressively. And so, after a matter of seconds, Nicholas was left in the room completely alone. However, he did not stay there for long, and soon also left the meeting hall. Having reached his chambers, Nicholas told his first mate Felton that he could be free. Finding himself alone with himself, the man exhaled with relief and began to replay everything that had happened in his head. He remembered Louis's angry face, after which Nicholas thought that perhaps he had gone too far with the mice, since the Southern Duke, after all, was much older than him. Literally falling onto the bed without undressing, the man came to the conclusion that, after all, hatred towards him would be preferable to disdain. And then he remembered Bella, where he asked his assistants to find out as much information as possible about her, where it turned out that she was in the service of the southernmost duke. This state of affairs did not please Nicholas at all, where the girl he really liked turned out to be close to the one who despises him. Bella and her little maid, after visiting the Duke of the South, returned to their place, where Evie, grimacing, said that Louis, losing the war, invited them only to cover himself, and now he was trying to pretend to be something, which made Bella laugh very much. But approaching her chambers, Evie saw an envelope at the door, which she immediately informed her mistress about. Having received the envelope from the hands of the maid and opened it, Bella discovered that it was an invitation to the imperial ball, where only the sender was not indicated. The little maid was very happy that her mistress was invited to the ball, where for some reason Bella herself did not share her joy, which greatly surprised the little maid, who asked her mistress why she was not happy about this invitation. To which Bella, without any hesitation, explained that this invitation was nothing more than a test. This is evidenced by the absence of the name of the sender, who, if his intentions were pure, would at least pay his respects during a personal visit. Evie immediately asked for what purpose this test was arranged, immediately receiving the answer that most likely in order to understand how much she understands high society. After she cleared everything up for her maid, Bella began to think of ways to get out of the situation, where the first option was to simply ignore the invitation, where she would then be seen as arrogant. Another option was to find a partner to accompany her, but in this case she would either be considered calculating, or they would think that she was scared. Listening to her mistress's thoughts, Evie said that any of the above options was not very good, but something had to be chosen, to which Bella suddenly told the maid to get her dress. Evie didn't understand what they were talking about at first, and Bella had to explain that she needed to get that very dress, which was one of the reasons for their lack of money. And to completely complete the look, you need to decorate this dress with flowers and choose a beautiful fan. And then came the day of the imperial ball, where guests were amazed at the scale of the event, where a whole lake of champagne was made in the center of the hall. Welcoming first one or the other guests, the cardinal at the same time thought about whether that girl from the incessant rumors would come today. And as he suddenly heard, he was not the only one interested in this question, where two ladies standing nearby were talking about the fact that among the guests, they had even made bets on whether this girl would come and how exactly she would appear. Having listened to this conversation, the cardinal turned to the man sitting next to him, saying that thanks to him, today's evening promises to be very interesting. And suddenly, general exclamations witnessed the beginning of some interesting events, where the door to the ballroom opened and the one everyone was so eager to see today appeared on the threshold. And while Bella moved around the hall, she kept hearing disapproving remarks addressed to her, mainly regarding the way she dressed up. Without answering a single comment, Bella proudly walked into the very center of the hall and took a place where everyone present could see her. Mordecai was very interested in what this girl would do now, and he turned all attention. Meanwhile, Bella stood and listened to the rude statements of one of the guests, who said that no clothes would help her and it was low for a girl to appear unaccompanied. The next remark of this aristocrat was that this girl does not understand anything about the rules of etiquette. And while he was saying these words, Bella chuckled loudly enough, which of course could not go unnoticed by this man and greatly hurt his pride. Bella, continuing to remain silent for now, covered her face with a fan, hiding her smile. And the cardinal, closely watching what was happening, noted that it was bold and even daring on her part to make the first move, but could she pull it all out to the bitter end? And then a woman appeared in the foreground in front of Bella, who immediately accused the girl of indecent behavior and said that she absolutely did not understand where she was. To which Bella first asked the person who approached to explain where they were, and then added that nothing unusual had happened yet. Not knowing what to say to this, the loser turned away and walked away, muttering something under her breath. Mordecai was simply amazed that Bella only needed a couple of words to calm down the person who attacked her, and the girl's cold gaze was already directed in a completely different direction, where the cardinal, looking up, noted with horror that she was looking straight at him because their eyes met. And while the cardinal was calming his hands from trembling from overexcitement, the person who had lost the verbal battle loudly announced that there was a guest in the hall who did not correspond to the status of the ball, where the lady approached the manager and said that it was urgently necessary to take some measures regarding this matter. But before the manager had time to say a word, the very guest whose words Bella had mocked suddenly burst into a cry that it was impermissible to come to the ball without permission, and that this impudent girl simply needed to be thrown out. After which he resolutely headed in the direction where Bella towered over the guests. And as soon as he approached her at arm's length, the girl with a sharp movement of her hand took out the envelope. At the same time, the movement of the hand with the envelope followed a trajectory that passed through the approaching man, from which, under the influence of the girl's amazing strength, he immediately found himself on the floor. Getting even more embittered, he looked at his offender, where I saw that she was squeezing with her fingers nothing more than an official invitation to this ball. The whole situation made the cardinal laugh a lot, where he said that it doesn't look like this girl will suffer today. After which he turned to the man sitting next to him, asking why he invited this girl to the ball. Meanwhile, Bella stood and thought that now, probably, all the guests were furious, and she could calmly leave this event, thinking that although she did not know who set this trap, he nevertheless helped her, since she was ready to show herself to all high society. The girl did not immediately notice how someone approached her from behind, but since her sensitivity was very well developed, Bella rather sharply turned around to face the one who tried to sneak up from behind. And the man who approached suddenly expressed his gratitude to the girl for accepting his invitation. And while he kissed her hand, Bella answered him with words of gratitude for the invitation to this wonderful event. And when the ceremonies were over, the girl said that due to the fact that she did not have a partner to dance, she was forced to say goodbye and leave the ball. And just as she turned to head towards the exit, the man suddenly grabbed her roughly by the shoulder. Turning Bella around to face him and grabbing her with both hands, the man said that the girl should stay longer, as she could dance with him. And Bella looked in surprise at the uninvited gentleman, thinking about where he came from, so rude and tactless. Immediately the girl, looking around, noted that their duet was now the subject of everyone's attention. But the arrogant man still did not let up, where, continuing to hold the girl, he shouted in an equally arrogant tone to bring him a drink. And while his glass was being filled, he offered Bella a drink before going to dance. But the girl proudly turned away from the annoying, impudent man, making it clear that she was not going to drink. That didn't stop the man's actions, where he turned the girl's head towards him, grabbing her chin. After which, saying that he still insisted, the man poured the contents of the glass directly on the girl's head. Accompanying this action with the words that no one dares refuse to drink with him, the younger brother of the Duke of the Northern Lands, Aidan McGrath Doherty. Having finally heard the name of this impudent man, Bella immediately realized that now they were simply taking revenge on her for her attention to the north, and Aidan had already managed to get a handkerchief and wipe the girl's face, simultaneously asking if she would like another glass. But before the girl had time to open her mouth, the man's hand suddenly slid lower, right onto Bella's chest, where the very handkerchief with which he had just wiped the girl's face remained. After which, absolutely pleased with himself, Aidan took a step back, taking the appropriate pose. Those around looked at what was happening with great interest, because the younger brother of the Duke of the North had just performed a gesture that is usually awarded only to women who sell love for money. Bella herself was not discouraged by what had happened. Her seeming stupor actually hit a thought process where she was trying to choose between pouring champagne on the insolent person in response, slapping him in the face, or simply pulling him by the hair. Squeezing her fan, the girl thought that if everything were so simple, she would certainly implement one of these options. But circumstances and her future plans required more subtle actions, and Bella suddenly smiled tenderly, looking at her offender. And this had the desired effect, where the impudent man already looked discouraged. Then, without changing her good-natured expression, Bella took one of the flowers from her hair and wrapped it in the same scarf that Aiden had left on her chest. And finally, the girl placed the created structure directly in the man's glass, which he continued to hold all this time in one of his hands. Having finished her actions, Bella cheerfully said that now she was definitely forced to take her leave. Having difficulty containing her rage, the girl quickly headed towards the exit. Literally rushing through the corridors of the palace, Bella thought that she had been overtaken by a complete failure, where she was unable to freely declare her existence. Suddenly she stopped, telling herself that she needed to calm down, because she was no longer the same as before. She replayed in her head what this shameless scion of the imperial family had just done to her, and she came to the unequivocal conclusion that she should not and cannot give in confronting this non-entity. With the words that her mistress had come earlier than expected, the little maid greeted Bella, where the strong smell of alcohol immediately hit the nose of a girl who didn't drink at all. And then Evie drew attention to the shabby appearance of her mistress, asking what had happened to her. But saying that she would explain everything later, Bella asked the maid to help her change clothes, since she was leaving again, which caused great bewilderment in Evie, where the maid said that it would take a long time to change from one dress to another. However, Bella said that she initially chose the wrong path, and while drying her wet hair, she asked the girl to prepare a military uniform. Meanwhile, at the ball, the cardinal lamented about how poorly the girl had carried out her presentation, to which Aiden immediately replied that her fate was completely indifferent to him. But Mordecai did not let up, declaring that it must have been very humiliating for such a beautiful girl. However, Aiden did not remain in debt, saying that he did not find anything beautiful in her. Suddenly, the cardinal's attention was attracted by some commotion among the guests. Looking into the crowd, Mordecai tried to attract Aiden's attention, but he stubbornly declared that he was not interested in anything else here. But still, succumbing to the persuasion of his interlocutor, the man looked and saw an approaching figure in such a form that made it possible to identify the person as belonging to the highest nobility of the South. And so Bella appeared before her offenders in a completely different image, where Aiden, staring at the girl, was simply speechless, only thinking about why the girl was looking at him like that. And Bella had already managed to get closer and invited the man to join her for one dance. And only now, having examined the girl more carefully, the brother of the Duke of the North realized who was standing in front of him and inviting him to dance. But before he had time to say a word in response, Bella sharply grabbed his hand, saying that after everything that had happened between them, he could not refuse her. With a light and quick movement, she literally tore the man from his seat. And now the girl was already heading to the place for the dance, dragging behind her the intractable gentleman, who could only wonder where this fragile girl got so much strength. Taking the leading male role in the dance, Bella began to spin, dragging the stunned Aiden with her, and saying that the dance would continue even despite the man's reluctance to dance. At the next turn, the girl said that it was her first time at the ball, and she simply did not know the local customs, where, if she was informed in a timely manner that a man likes rudeness, everything could initially be arranged differently. Turning around her grief-stricken partner, the girl suddenly said that their mutual enmity did not promise anything good, and offered to give in to each other. But the already enraged man was no longer going to put up, and was only thinking about how to immediately take revenge on the overly impudent girl. Realizing from the expression on Aiden's face that no reconciliation was planned, Bella once again turned him around on his own axis, approaching the lake with champagne. The man felt how, after turning, the girl directed the movement of his body strictly in a straight line backwards. And suddenly, Bella let go of her boyfriend's hand, which she had previously squeezed so tightly that he had no chance of escaping. Then inertia did its job, pulling Aiden straight into the lake of champagne. But at the very last moment, when it seemed that a fall could no longer be avoided, Bella somehow suddenly appeared nearby and managed to grab the man by the waist. Enraged to the wildest stage, Aiden could only threaten the girl not to let him go, or otherwise he would simply finish her off. And Bella had no intention of leaving her gentleman, where, having returned him to a vertical position, she said that she could not afford to show such disrespect for a member of the imperial family, and thanked the man for the wonderful dance. Aiden didn't seem to understand a word of what the girl was saying, staring at her with his lost gaze and holding her wrists, which were starting to hurt a lot. Removing his hand from the sore spot, he saw that in the very place where Bella had just held him, he instantly developed a severe hematoma. Aiden could no longer restrain himself, and his hand seemed to shoot up. Then, with a sharp movement, it flew across the face of his recent dance partner. However, the intended goal was not achieved, since Bella exposed her open palm to the blow, which landed an unsuccessful slap in the face. Not expecting the girl to defend herself, Aiden was simply taken aback. Having told the man that apparently he had no intention of reconciling, Bella, with a sharp movement of her foot, tripped Aiden's supporting leg. Unable to maintain his balance, the man plunged into the lake of champagne with all his might. And the girl, quoting her boyfriend, asked if he liked the champagne and if he wanted to drink more with her. The disgraced man sat in a puddle of alcohol and said nothing in response. And the girl, completing her triumph, once again thanked Aiden for the wonderful time spent. Suddenly, something like applause was heard from the side. It was the cardinal, who not only clapped his hands, but also laughed, saying that he had witnessed an amazing spectacle. Meanwhile, red electric discharges suddenly began to gather around the gentleman who had been defeated by the dance, where, having sufficiently awakened his power, Aiden struck back. Deftly dodging the discharge rushing towards her, Bella noted to herself that this, apparently, was the power of the North. Mordecai cheerfully noted that now the young prince was truly angry, which was true and was clearly visible in the frantic expression on the man's face, surrounded by electric discharges. Many years ago, the kingdom was wiped off the face of the earth. One day, a passage to the world of the dead was opened, and the living dead filled the earth, spreading chaos and death everywhere. Having visited the world of the dead, Susan Doherty returned from there endowed with divine power. Using her strength, she easily defeated the dead. Having restored peace and tranquility to the kingdom, Susan divided her power among her descendants. The Northern Duke's younger brother had inherited that very part of the power and was now advancing on Bella, saying that it was not too late to beg for forgiveness. Where, coming close to the girl, he said that then she would save one eye, to which Bella immediately replied that one was not enough for her, and she wanted to have both eyes. Even more enraged by the girl's disobedience and fearlessness, Aiden swung his hand, shouting that in this case she would lose both eyes at once. But his actions were interrupted by a man who suddenly appeared, who said that he had come to escort Aiden. Seeing who came, the man instantly calmed down and lowered his raised hand, which was very surprising for Bella, who had no idea yet who could influence this madman so much. Turning around, Bella saw that standing in front of her was the Marquis of the Northern Lands, Anthony Morgan, who was telling Aiden that that was enough for today, and it was time for them to go. And to the surprise of everyone, the angry man suddenly sharply moderated his ardor and, in response to Anthony's repeated request, said that he had heard him. Leaving the scene of the stormy events of the evening, dissatisfied with this outcome, Aiden, passing by Bella, forcefully pushed her with his shoulder. The Marquis also hurried to leave the ball, but he was stopped by a woman's call, where, the voice, of course, belonged to Bella, who called out to him in one word, "Father." But pretending that this appeal did not concern him, the man simply continued moving. Then Bella called out to him again, this time calling him His Excellency the Marquis Morgan, and asking if the wound he had previously told her about in a note was okay, to which Anthony dryly and coldly replied that it had nothing to do with the girl. Bella listened silently to what her heartless father answered, without commenting or responding. Soon, the Marquis and Aiden were already in the part of the palace reserved for the North, where the disgruntled brother of the Duke of the North was wondering if this girl was definitely not the daughter of the Marquis, because she looked very much like him. To which Anthony answered without hesitation that his daughter had been dead for a long time, and this was just a fraudster who was trying to take advantage of his weakness. Deciding to change the direction of the conversation, the Marquis suddenly thanked Aiden for intervening to defend the honor of his family and the entire North. But the man was clearly not happy with this turn, muttering through his teeth so that Anthony would not even try to flatter him. But the Marquis continued, saying that although Aiden's chosen method could not be called elegant, because his appearance, like that of a cat that had fallen into water, would only disgrace the imperial family. The man, who was starting to get angry again, tried to object to what was said, but the Marquis deftly interrupted him, saying that in any case he was grateful. Apparently the assertiveness of the Marquis, who knew how to approach this unbalanced man, had an effect, and Aiden said that we should tell this damn South to hell and forget about everything. And Anthony continued to talk, already voicing his thoughts that the Duke of the South lost all his children in the war, and his new knight simply cleverly entangled the old man. But suddenly looking at Aiden, the Marquis thought that this stupid boy sitting in front of him could not even imagine the whole reality of what was happening, where the girl who dipped him in champagne was really his daughter. Night fell, and Nicholas, as usual, sat in the park, lost in thought. During the day, he felt a strong vibration emanating from the ballroom, and came to the conclusion that the power of Empress Doherty, gifted to the Dukes of the Lands, was used. Nicholas immediately realized that only a true fool in the person of Aiden was capable of such a thoughtless act. Then, leaning back, the man thought that he might be an even greater fool, waiting for an hour to meet the girl. And at that very moment, a female voice made him turn around, saying that today she was lucky to see a man here. Bella stood in front of him in all her beauty, wishing the man who turned around good night. Nicholas noted that the girl was clearly not dressed for sleep, and apparently was attending some kind of event. But not satisfying her interlocutor's interest, Bella suggested talking about something else. And the Duke of the East mentally noted that the girl looked very tired. Rising from the bench, Nicholas said that he had been waiting for the girl all this time for only one purpose, to say goodbye to her. What was announced greatly surprised Bella, who did not understand the reason for such strong changes. And Nicholas continued, saying that there could be no more of their nightly walks together, and the girl should forget that she even met him. Which plunged Bella, who had already experienced severe stress today, into even greater bewilderment. And finally, an explanation followed with the following statement, where the man said that he became aware of the girl's service for the benefit of the South. Bella quickly began to say that she did not hide the fact that she served the South, but Nicholas insisted on his own. Where the man said that although Bella is a good person, from now on, he will be forced to treat her the same way he treats all Southerners, cynically insulting them at every opportunity. Several months ago, the Empress issued a decree to select and bring the best knights. Apparently for this reason, the Duke of the South invited Bella. In connection with this, there is a high probability that all lands may soon find themselves on the battlefield, where, acting on orders and in the name of the Empress in any case, strife will begin between, and where Nicholas and Bella will become real enemies for each other. The girl stood without interrupting and listened to everything that Nicholas said, building a logical chain. And suddenly she said that she could not agree to such conditions. With a sharp movement, she sat Nicholas back on the bench, saying that, apparently, all male rulers have a share of composure in their character, which she was convinced of today when communicating with the Prince of the North. Then she asked him if they were friends with Aiden, to which Nicholas immediately shouted that he would never in his life become a friend of such a person, which amused his interlocutor. But Bella said in all seriousness that she was really here as a representative of the South, which, however, did not create a reason for hostility, which, by the way, she did not want. But the stubborn man insisted on his own, arguing that this circumstance could not be simply ignored. But the resourceful girl immediately reminded the man that he had already helped her when she said that she was a representative of the North, to which Nicholas immediately replied that now was a different case, and the girl could suffer from getting closer to him. Bella said that she had nothing to fear, and that she could deal with any problems that arose herself. Then the surprised man asked whether it was worth exposing himself to such great danger, to which Bella quickly replied that it goes without saying, because she really likes Nicholas. Such openness and revelation stunned the man, who did not know how to react to what was said, looking in confusion at the carefree smiling girl. And then Bella reminded the man that he owed her something and promised to repay her at any time, where she was referring to the situation when the girl gave Nicholas a sacrificial stone confiscated from the robbers. And now, as a final reckoning, she insists that their friendship will continue no matter what. Realizing that he was in a desperate situation, Nicholas said that under such circumstances, he might begin to look like someone who was afraid of the South. But the girl, extending her hand to the man, said that she invited him to live together until one of them dies. Nicholas looked at the outstretched hand of the world, lowered his eyes and smiled lightly, after which he raised his head and put his palm in the girl's hand, saying that this was too radical a promise to be friends until death. Bella was in seventh heaven, rejoicing that the relationship with this man she really liked did not end. However, getting up from the bench, Nicholas said that with all this he had one condition, to which the girl immediately asked what it was, to which the Duke of the East said that the conditions were that the girl should not be imbued with him too much. And at that very moment, realizing what he had just said, Nicholas closed his face in shame, and Bella, smiling, voiced her thought that the man was embarrassed by his own words. She leaned towards the embarrassed man, trying to look into the eyes that he was hiding from the girl, and asked what she should do now, because she already liked him very much. Looking furtively at his interlocutor, Nicholas said that simple sympathy is a completely acceptable phenomenon, after which he added that he meant a stronger attraction to the opposite sex, he just didn't put it that way. And the man ended his part of the dialogue by saying that if a girl suddenly falls in love with him, then she should immediately inform him about it. Bella, having examined the man from head to toe, thought that everyone might have their own quirks. Then she turned around and said that everything was fine, and she also did not plan to have a close relationship, and headed towards the flowers growing nearby. Along the way, she also added that it was enough for her to be a partner for one dance. Finding herself next to the rose bushes, Bella picked one of them and walked back to the man. Handing him this flower, Bella told him that he had nothing to worry about and could just enjoy the moments, adding at the end that everything has a beginning and an end, and one should live life to the fullest while time allows. After which there was silence, where Bella and Nicholas stood in the middle of the garden, enjoying the night and each other's company. Also enjoying the night, but not in the garden, but in one of the rooms allocated to the north side, was the Marquis of the North, Anthony Morgan. The sound of the door opening interrupted the Marquis's pleasant thoughts and emotions, forcing him to turn around, where he saw that the cardinal himself came to him, holding a glass of wine in his hand. The Marquis reproached the cardinal for making such a sloppy visit where he could be seen, to which Mordecai immediately replied that he had an official excuse for that case. And coming closer to Anthony, he asked if the Marquis would like to ask him anything. And there really was a question, where the man was immediately asked why this child was alive, while she was sacrificed in such a way that there was not even a corpse left. To which the cardinal, smiling, exclaimed that it was very cruel of the Marquis to say so when his daughter was resurrected. And Anthony said in all seriousness that now she is with the South, where their duke can find out about the cardinal's plans. But the cardinal, having drained his glass, said that it was too late to worry about anything, since the Marquis's daughter had already seen him. While Mordecai was saying this, a picture of the past flashed through his thoughts, where he was sitting in a chair looking at the future victim. Then, lowering his hand with the empty glass, the cardinal added that from her look, he realized that the girl remembered both that day and him very well, from the look he was able to see at today's ball, where this girl smiled at the man who literally pushed her into hell. Having already managed to sit down, Mordecai said that now the child that he and the Marquis had sacrificed had returned back as a real monster, where this once helpless girl was able to get to the imperial palace herself, which means a lot. After listening to the cardinal, the Marquis concluded that she needed all this to oppose them, to take revenge. The cardinal agreed with Anthony's guesses, and said that the man should meet with his daughter and find out all her intentions. Coming closer and handing the Marquis his empty glass, the cardinal coldly said that this was not a request on his part, but an order. The Marquis responded to the departing ruler that he obeyed. Once upon a time, a very, very long time ago, a rift opened, which opened the doors between the world of people and the world of the dead. Mordecai secretly wanted to receive the power that the Empress possessed after her stay in the world of the dead. To gain power, the cardinal secretly sacrificed countless little girls by pushing them into the rift. However, the desire to seize power equivalent to that of the Empress is equivalent to rebellion. Therefore, the Marquis thought that he was forced to hide not only the truth that he had sacrificed his own daughter, but also his secret was that by doing this, he had joined the rebellion. The Duke of the South moved along one of the corridors of the castle, accompanied by Bella, and said that he had already heard about yesterday's events at the ball, to which the girl casually replied that she simply defended the honor of the South and won. And Louis said, not in all seriousness, that today he would officially declare her a full-fledged representative of the South, and the girl needed to control herself. But the girl did not answer anything, noting to herself the moralizing tone of the Duke. And while they continued to move, the Duke said that today the Empress would give an official order to enter the war, to which Bella asked who she wanted to conquer. They had already arrived at the ceremonial hall, where they were greeted by one of the Southerners, when Louis, answering the girl's question, said that soon all the secrets would be revealed. Nicholas was already in the hall, and immediately noticed Bella and the Southern Duke arriving. The girl also immediately noticed her companion on night walks, where the latter did not go unnoticed by Louis. In his usual manner of communicating with the dukes of other lands, Nicholas said that finally the old Southern scoundrel had also arrived. This behavior from Nicholas was new to Bella, and of course it wildly infuriated the Duke of the South. Representatives of the northern lands stood nearby in full force, where at some point the views of the Marquis and Bella suddenly crossed. But at that very moment, Louis told the girl to always stay close to him during the ceremony, to which she responded with words of obedience. And suddenly loud sounds notified everyone present about the arrival of the Empress. She appeared at the very far end of the hall, and everyone present immediately bowed before her. No one dared to raise their heads as the Empress moved with her graceful gait across the entire ceremony hall. And so she took her place on her throne, resting her head on her hand and half-heartedly telling everyone to raise their heads. After which she still said coldly that she was glad to see everyone present, some of whom she had already met before, and some of whom she was seeing for the first time. Yawning unceremoniously, Susan asked why they were all gathered here, to which the cardinal immediately replied that today was the day the empire was founded. Then, having received permission from the Empress, Mordecai began to voice the fact that today was a happy day, and in order to celebrate the 100-year history of the empire, the Empress issued a decree on expanding the territories, where the new place that should become part of the empire is the world of the dead. This statement surprised even Bella, who had seen a lot on her thorny path. Meanwhile, the cardinal, so that no one doubted what he had heard, repeated once again that the Empress orders the conquest of the world of the dead. Then the word was given to the Duke of the East, as the one who had already confronted the dead and won that war. Coming forward and greeting the Empress, Louis said that he asked permission to shift his powers to younger shoulders. Having agreed, Susan drew her sword and asked the Duke to point out a successor, after which, without saying a word, Bella stepped forward. The Empress asked the girl what her name was, to which she, getting down on one knee, said that her name was Bella Morgan. Lowering the sword to the girl's throat, Susan said that Bella had gone too far under such a despicable name, and leaving a wound on the girl's neck, which immediately began to bleed, the Empress said that she would deal with it with her own hands. However, Susan's next words were permission for Bella to enter the world of the dead and put her life on the line. Smiling, the girl replied that everything would be as Her Majesty wished. After this, the Empress immediately left. Bella and Louis also decided to leave, but on the way the girl was suddenly called out by Anthony. Pressing the wound on her neck, Bella noted to herself that it was extremely unusual that the Marquis himself made contact with her, having avoided her in every possible way before. With an unusually good-natured expression on his face, Anthony asked if the lady would give him a couple of minutes, to which Bella, smiling coldly, replied that the address of a lady was not appropriate here, since she was a knight. Looking down, the Marquis agreed that he had made a mistake in handling and apologized, after which he repeated his request, turning to the night girl and saying that it would not take much time. Having received Louis's tacit consent, Bella replied that she was ready to talk, but not for long. A few minutes later, they were sitting alone in a separate room. With fatherly concern in his voice, the Marquis said that Bella looked very good. The girl was silent for several seconds, trying to compare everything that she knew up to that moment. After which, without showing much emotion, Bella asked if the father really recognized his daughter. Whereas the Marquis, still with the same good-natured expression on his face, he replied that he could not help but recognize his own daughter. After what was said, Bella tensed a little, trying to understand what this man was up to. Anthony continued the conversation, saying that Bella had made a dangerous choice by taking the place of the Duke of the South in the war. To which the girl, suddenly grinning, said that her father had gone too far, starting their dialogue with moral teachings, where in fact he should have started with something else. Lowering his gaze, the Marquis said that this is so, he should start with completely different words. Then, without a word, the man suddenly rose from his seat and straightened up. But a second later, the Marquis fell to his knees in front of the girl, saying one single word, "Forgive me." Looking pitifully at the man kneeling in front of her, Bella voiced her thoughts that it was impossible to say that she had not imagined this moment. The girl also got up from her seat, and heading towards the man, said that now that this moment had come, for some reason she did not feel the expected joy. Also kneeling in front of her father and taking his hands, Bella asked why he did this to her. But without answering the girl's question, Anthony said that he could not believe that she had reappeared. Without wiping the streaming tears from his eyes, the Marquis said that all his thoughts were only about the fact that he would never see his daughter again. Bella looked at the crying man with pity and attracted his attention, calling him father. Hugging him by the shoulders, the girl said that she was very, very sorry, and she would definitely have believed his words and tears if only there had not been a recent poisoning attempt. And upon hearing this, the man began to realize that he had miscalculated. Grabbing the girl by the hands, the Marquis shouted for her to name what she wanted him to do for her, and it would be done. To which Bella good-naturedly, and without any hesitation, replied that she just wanted to live under her own name, where all she needs is for the Marquis to officially recognize her existence as a daughter. Both the girl and the man understood what would follow such a confession, because the Marquis had been claiming for many years about the death of his daughter. Therefore, bowing his head, Anthony replied that he could not fulfill this girl's request. As if not understanding the difficulty, Bella asked why a man couldn't do this, to which the Marquis angrily said that such a confession would be proof of his participation in the rebellion. The girl did not understand this statement because she believed that we were talking only about morality, and her father immediately explained that he gave her to the cardinal that day so that he would use the girl in opposition to the empress, and if this turned out to be true, Bella would become the daughter of a rebel. Having said this, the Marquis grabbed the girl by the hands, saying that instead of that life, he would give her another, new one, where he promises her a more noble life than the life of the daughter of a Marquis, who is in no way inferior to the life of a member of the imperial family. The girl looked at her father with a hint of contempt. Then she said that she would not give up the name Bella Morgan, even if it brought her fame as the daughter of a rebel. And suddenly she asked her father if he wanted to get rid of her, where she was claiming recognition as her blood family. The Marquis was silent, turning over in his head the thoughts that the girl was reading him like an open book, and the role of a yearning father did not work. And so, taking off his mask, Anthony told the girl to speak directly, everything as it is. Taking a closer look at her father, Bella said that she was ready to give him a chance. Taking a knife from the table, the girl walked up and put it in the hand of the man who was perplexed by her actions. Looking at her father with her cold gaze, Bella said that she was giving him a chance to kill her. The girl said that he only has time until she takes over the world of the dead. And then, turning the tip of the knife towards the man's throat, Bella added that if he doesn't kill her by then she will end his life. But suddenly, the girl took the knife from her father's hands and said that he nevertheless still had a chance to save his life. And sitting down on her knees in front of him with a knife in her hands, the girl said that for this, her father would simply have to recognize her. The man exhaled loudly, turning over in his head all the options indicated for him: kill, die, or confess. And gathering his courage, he asked the girl why she would do this to him. And Bella said that she had a similar question regarding why the father suddenly gave poison to his resurrected daughter. 6 years ago, Bella suddenly found herself right in the middle of one of the city streets. Looking around herself, the girl did not understand where she was and what was happening. After all, just recently she was in a completely different place, where she experienced something terrible. Suddenly, a voice behind her attracted Bella's attention. A man approached the girl and asked if she was alone here. And now, Bella and this man were already standing in some house, where a certain woman was paying him, and the girl, looking around, tried to find out from him what kind of place it was. But there was no answer, and from all sides, some people with obvious bad and vulgar intentions were looking at the child. Frightened, the girl suddenly grabbed the man by the clothes and shouted that she was from a family of aristocrats. Before the man had time to react to this, the girl added that she was the daughter of Viscount Morgan and asked to take her home. The actions of the man, who was about to cover the child's mouth, were stopped by the woman sitting next to her, who paid closer attention to Bella after what was said to her. Leaning towards Bella, the woman asked if she could write, to which she immediately received a positive answer. In a very short period of time, the child was given a piece of paper and a pen, which gave him the opportunity to demonstrate his writing skills. When Bella finished, the woman took the piece of paper, read a few lines of the poem, and asked the girl what it was. To which Bella replied that this was the first poem from a collection of poems by Megan Waldridge. Such knowledge greatly pleased the woman, who said that Bella was truly an aristocrat. And so, a few minutes later, Bella was already sitting on a chain in one of the rooms of this terrible house for her. She couldn't think about anything other than her father, who said he loved her, but in reality betrayed her. Then the girl heard that the woman's messenger, whom she had sent to find out information about the Morgan family, had returned. And to his mistress's question, the man replied that the Morgan family really exists, only they are not viscounts, but counts. And when the woman asked if there was any information about her daughter, the messenger replied that the Morgans had a daughter, but she died. Little Bella listened to this entire conversation with both interest and fear. The woman said that, obviously, the situation here was not simple and moreover suspicious. And then the idea came to her head, to cut off a lock of the girl's hair and send it to Count Morgan as evidence. From this room, the girl was transferred that same evening to another, which was located in the building next door, where the woman, threatening separation from her family forever, ordered Bella to sit very quietly. The girl's instructions were interrupted by the one who found her, telling the woman that it was time for them to go. And then everyone left the room, leaving Bella completely alone. The girl looked out the window and saw those who kidnapped her and locked her in this dungeon. Sadly lowering her head on the stool, Bella thought about whether her father would come to save her, and if he did, whether she could then trust him again. And then she saw a crowd of men heading towards the kidnappers, where they were led by the butler of the Morgan family, Carl, whom the girl loved very much. The joy of the child who saw his savior knew no bounds. Meanwhile, negotiations began on the street regarding the fate of the girl, where the resourceful woman demanded to see money. And when Carl asked where the child was, the woman replied that it was in the back room of the tavern, but they would only take her out after handing over the money. But the butler was in no hurry to hand over the money. Instead, as he approached, he again inquired whether the child was really in the tavern, to which he immediately received a positive answer. Bella stood up and just started screaming that the woman was lying and she was sitting in another place. How her scream was interrupted by the fact that she saw the quick movement of one of the men accompanying Carl, who plunged a knife straight into the woman's heart, and her beloved butler loudly ordered to burn everything here to the ground so that no one could leave alive. And so, having driven the people inside who tried to get out, those accompanying the butler began to carry out the order. Soon, everything around was on fire, and the murderers only had time to throw back all those who tried to leave the premises. So they burned one building after another, cynically and mercilessly killing innocent people. When it became clear that there were no more survivors, Carl and his assistants left the scene of the massacre. And the little girl, who was in one of the burning and already beginning to collapse buildings, experiencing terrible agony from a broken heart, repeated through her tears Megan Waldridge's poems that she had recently written. All these memories flashed through the thoughts of the girl in a split second as she looked at the man who arranged all these terrible trials for her. Without saying another word, Bella turned around and quickly left the room where such a long-awaited meeting with her father took place. Bella's little maid was lying on the sofa and looking at the piece of bread from which she had just taken a bite, thought. They were only in the palace for the third day, where on the first day they tried to poison her mistress. On the second day, the lady was humiliated at a banquet and doused with champagne. And so little Evie was faced with the question of what form the mistress would return in today. As soon as the maid drove away this thought, the sound of the door opening was heard. Evie turned around sharply and said in surprise that the mistress was in perfect order, thereby causing Bella complete bewilderment. But the little maid immediately changed the subject, asking why Bella returned so early, having said earlier that she had a lot to do. But there was no answer to this question from the lady. She seemed to be in some kind of prostration. Surprised, Evie quickly asked what happened to the girl that she was behaving so strangely, to which Bella replied that nothing could be hidden from the maid's eyes, and explained that she had met with her father. Inviting Bella to sit down quickly, Evie excitedly asked to tell everything in detail. Taking a seat next to her maid, the girl said that this was a forced conversation. But Evie did not allow her to continue, assuming that the girl was hungry, and asked her to wait while she set the table. In a matter of minutes, a variety of sweets appeared on the table, looking at which Bella asked in amazement where Evie got it all, to which the little maid explained what she received from her well-wishers in the palace. She told people stories. Everyone found her very nice and treated her to various foods. And now it so happens that almost all the adult maids are constantly taking care of her and feeding her. Bella was greatly amused by the way her little maid talked about her achievements. But then the girl made a serious face and said that the maid should now listen to her carefully. Of course, Evie agreed, and Bella said that in the very near future, not very good people would start approaching her through her maid. And when asked who these people were, the girl said that most likely they would be her father's people. And if suddenly these people seemed dangerous to Evie, she should immediately hide from them. The little maid listened carefully to her mistress's instructions, realizing that the situation could indeed be serious. And after a short pause, the maid asked what she should do if it was not at all dangerous. And Bella whispered in the girl's ear about what to do if people turned out to be not entirely dangerous. After some time, Evie went down to the laundry room, where she began washing her and her mistress's linen and clothes. And then the butler of the Morgan family approached her, who said that despite the fact that the maid is so small, she is very diligent. Evie asked the man who he was, to which Carl replied that he, like the girl, was simply a servant of his master. After which, having asked whether the girl liked sweets, the butler took out a whole bag of sweets and handed it to Evie. Such kindness seemed very suspicious to the little maid. Evening came, where everyone gathered again in the imperial palace. In the center stood the cardinal, who said that by today all preparations for the campaign had been completed. At the head of the southern army, as it was determined, was Bella. Not far from her, the eastern Duke Nicholas stood with his warriors. And the cardinal read out lines that said that today a significant event would take place in this place in honor of the founding day of the empire. The world inside the rift was called the world of the dead by the living, and it is filled with the most terrible creatures, which people call dead, undead monsters. This rift appeared in the palace of the Empire 100 years ago, which marked the first meeting of people with the dead, who crowded into the world of the living. Then people did not yet know how to resist them, and many died, unable to stop the march of living death. Her Majesty Empress Susan, using the resulting power, was able to close the rift. She became a protector of people from the dead who coveted the human world. Having finished reading, the cardinal rolled up the scroll and addressed everyone present in the hall, where he announced that today they would reopen the rift with their own hands. Then Mordecai, pointing to a mountain of sacrificial stones, said that everyone who could find and collect them here had served well for the good of the empire. And the man ended his speech with the words that now all those gathered must carry out the order of the Empress and conquer the world of the dead. He immediately pulled out a knife and ran the tip of the blade along his hand. From the opened wound, blood flowed in a stream directly onto the pile of sacrificial stones. At the same moment, the stones began to emit a strong blue glow, which mixed with the red color of the cardinal's blood. There was a loud bang, and a gate to the world of the dead opened right in the middle of the room. Drawing her sword, Bella immediately prepared for battle, and from the rift hordes of the dead have already poured into the world of the living. The cardinal had just given the order for the dead to be destroyed when a battle broke out. With quick and precise movements, Bella dealt with one dead man after another. But before she had time to rest for even a second, a new attack began on her, which had to be repelled. And then another sudden movement, and the head of another dead man, spinning in the air, fell to the floor. Assessing everything that was happening, the girl thought to herself that the enemy had too many forces. Not far away, the Duke of the East loudly demanded that his warriors stay in formation. With no less fast and deft movements, Nicholas destroyed uninvited guests from the world of the dead. The brother of the Duke of the North, who in this confrontation used his inherited strength, was not inferior to his colleagues. Having time to look around and evaluate what was happening, Bella came to the conviction that victory today should still remain with the living. Suddenly she saw one of the dead preparing to strike a decisive blow to one of the warriors of the South. Disarmed and no longer capable of resistance, the man only managed to utter the word, "Save." With one wave of her hand clutching the sword, Bella easily dealt with the dead man and saved her subordinate. Listening to the stuttering man who was trying to thank the savior, the girl came to the conclusion that the warriors of the South were very weak in battle and were only pulling everyone back. And suddenly something dark and very large appeared in the crack, where a second later a terrible flying monster burst out. Having made several flaps of its wings, the flying dead man found himself directly above the Duke of the South, who, despite the transfer of command to Bella, also participated in the battle. Louis looked at the terrible creature hovering in the air above him and could not utter a single word. And suddenly, the flying monster quickly swooped down, straight towards the Southern Duke. Bella was too far away to destroy the monster, where all she could do was scream for the Duke to save himself. But at that very moment, a split second before the monster would have attacked Louis, Nicholas, who was nearby, finished off the creature by thrusting his black sword into it. The stunned Southern Duke tried to ask why Nicholas had saved him, but the Eastern Duke interrupted his question, saying in his own way that Grandpa should have just said thank you first. After which Nicholas and Bella exchanged glances, where they understood each other without words. After which the secret allies dispersed in different directions to continue the battle. The cardinal, who had been standing nearby all this time, approached one of the dead, who was giving up the ghost, and said that, apparently, this attack had been repulsed, since no one else was coming out of the rift. And the out-of-breath warriors, catching their breath, echoed his words, saying that indeed no one else was visible in the rift. Then Mordecai loudly said that the first victory over the dead had just been won, and the path to the world of the dead was open. After which he gave orders to protect the rift until the complete conquest of the world of the dead was completed, which was a precautionary measure where more than just the dead could emerge from the rift onto the ground. The biggest fear was that one of the kings of the dead might be here in the world of the living. Both Bella and the Eastern Duke listened to his words with wariness and accompanying tension. Mordecai, again directly addressing those present, said that the first foray into the world of the dead was planned in 10 days, where the goal of this campaign is to take possession of the crown of one of the kings of the dead. Where with this feat, you need to prove your loyalty to Her Majesty the Empress. Sheathing the sword, Nicholas asked his first mate if all their people were safe, to which he immediately received a positive answer, after which he gave the order to the warriors of the East to return to their location, where the order was immediately duplicated by Felton and the junior commanders of the detachments. But before the men of the East had time to leave the battlefield, suddenly a rude cry from the Duke was heard behind them, where he demanded that Nicholas stop, calling him a brat. Still not quite understanding what was happening, Nicholas turned his head to look at the impudent man. It was Aidan McGrath Doherty, who, smiling wildly, said that he had already heard about Nicholas's insolence. Coming close to his opponent, Aidan mockingly asked why the Duke of the East did not bend the knee before him, a member of the imperial family. Nicholas, who was literally 2 heads taller than the arrogant prince, stood and silently looked down at him, after which he turned around and continued on his way, saying goodbye that he does not talk to people whose mental abilities are in doubt. Aidan, of course, could not stand this, and shouted to Nicholas that the pathetic slave did not dare talk to him like that. Then, Aidan's rapidly progressing madness issued a new insult to Nicholas, where the Duke of the East was told that dogs should bark like dogs. Of course, the words of the brother of the Duke of the North greatly hurt Nicholas, who did not have pure imperial blood, but he had not yet responded to the offender. And so the provocateur of the conflict touched upon the topic of blood, saying that, unlike Nicholas, his blood is pure. This was the last straw for the Eastern Duke, who sternly warned his opponent to be careful with his words. And at that very moment, when it seemed that a violent confrontation could no longer be avoided, Bella appeared and turned to the Duke of the East, first calling his title and then his full name. And when both men turned their attention to her, the girl said that this was their first official meeting, and she was glad to finally introduce herself to the Duke, giving her first and last name. Nicholas could not understand what was happening and why Bella decided to interfere in their conversation. Here, Aidan tried to insert his word, saying that he was actually speaking when the impudent woman interrupted him, but without paying any attention to this upstart, Bella noted that today, the Duke of the East saved the Duke of the South. And then, in front of the enraged brother of the Northern Duke, the girl brought gratitude on her own behalf and on behalf of the entire South to Nicholas for his invaluable help in preserving the life of Louis. After which the young people's gazes crossed, and the man realized that Bella had just prevented a completely unnecessary conflict. Replying that there was no need for gratitude, Nicholas turned and reordered his army to return, and Aidan tried to stop him, shouting after him how dare he turn his back on him. But suddenly Bella turned to him, calling him by his last name, which became another shock for the overly violent man. In a cold tone, the girl said that Aidan shouldn't lose his self-esteem with such behavior, and if he doesn't have any, then he should at least remember his manners. Seeing the new victim, Aidan reminded them that they still had unfinished business from the ball, after which lightning began to sparkle in his palm, and then someone forcefully put his hand on Aidan's head, saying that it all depends on how to raise the dog. And while the brother of the Northern Duke tried to shout for the cardinal to remove his hand, the latter said that if the dog was raised correctly, he could be useful in many ways. After which Mordecai noted that the entire Northern army had already left the battlefield, where it was time for Aidan to join his own. Shouting that Bella couldn't get rid of him so easily, the prince hurried to catch up with his army, and Bella breathed out a sigh of relief, where she was not afraid of confrontation with this man, she was just very tired of him. And the cardinal noticed that Aidan is so cute, where he himself was trained so much that he doesn't even understand that he himself became a dog a long time ago. Mordecai then turned to Bella and greeted her, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time and that she probably missed him. And suddenly the man grabbed the girl by her wrist. Bella demanded that the cardinal let her go, to which he replied that if the girl didn't like something, she could pull her hand away. And the resourceful girl replied that in this case, she was afraid to leave the cardinal without a hand. Continuing to hold Bella, Mordecai said that he really wanted to see her again, but not sharing the man's joy, Bella replied that this was absurd, since she had never been in a close or friendly relationship, to which the cardinal suddenly burst into violent laughter, and when he finished laughing, he approached the girl's face and said that he really wanted to get to know her better. Bella simply said in an icy tone that she was not at all interested in the cardinal in any sense, after which, with a light but quite strong movement, she freed herself from the grip, where she immediately headed away from the hall, where today the first battle with the dead took place in a long time, leaving the cardinal alone to rub his hand that was beginning to ache. Bella spent the rest of the night in her room with Evie, and when it got dark, the girl got ready for her usual night walk, to which the little maid said that this had already become a tradition. To which the resourceful Bella, smiling, told Evie that she would pretend not to notice the walks, and in return she would not be noticed eating the candy. The maid, having described the man who gave her the sweets, received confirmation from her mistress that they were handed over by the butler of the Morgan family. After which, happily clutching the bag of sweets, Evie said that she did everything exactly as her mistress told her, meaning what Bella whispered in her ear, saying that if it wasn't very dangerous, then the little maid should try to get closer to whoever would fit in her. The girl praised the maid for her courage and intelligence, and Evie asked what she should do next, because apparently she would now cross paths with the butler quite often, to which Bella, opening her usual nightly exit from the room, replied that Evie should be told about everything that would interest Carl, and the maid immediately said that she understood everything. Bella was already on the railing with a slight movement. Standing there, she added that it was not worth telling only about her night walks and meetings with the Eastern Duke, after which, as usual, she jumped down. And so she once again walked through the night garden with Nicholas, who noted that he found it much more pleasant to see a girl in a dress than in a military uniform. Bella was very pleased to hear such compliments from a man to whom she had long been partial, and Nicholas added that the fact that the form belonged to the South also had an influence. After these words, the girl turned to face the man, and she said that during the day, she was very surprised by the behavior of the Eastern Duke in communicating with the Duke of the South, where Nicholas behaved like a dog's son. Such a remark from the girl literally shocked the man, who never expected to hear such unpleasant words from Bella's lips. And then the girl said that she had expressed herself incorrectly, where the word son should rather be replaced with the word puppy, which didn't really improve the situation for the man. And Bella continued, saying that essentially both dog-son and puppy mean the same thing. It's just that puppy sounds cuter. Having asked if she was repeating all this on purpose, Nicholas responded with a lack of understanding of what was said wrong. However, Bella, deciding to change the topic of conversation, suddenly asked whether Nicholas would personally go to conquer the world of the dead, to which he replied that he would certainly, immediately asking a response question whether Bella would go there, to which he immediately received the answer that that was why she was initially invited. After listening to the girl, Nicholas asked with concern whether his companion on night walks could cope with such a difficult task. The girl was very pleased with such concern on the part of the man, but nevertheless she asked why the man was so worried. Thinking that Bella took this as doubt, Nicholas quickly said that he did not doubt her abilities at all. But then, recalling today's events, he said that the girl's entourage did not look like a very reliable support. Turning away in embarrassment, Bella stated out loud that Nicholas saw the situation where she saved the Southern warrior. Immediately, trying to somehow justify the skill of the Southern warriors, the man said that in fact they were very experienced, which Bella confirmed. But then, turning to face the girl, Nicholas said that he was still worried about her. After all, battles with the dead are not at all like those wars in which people participate by killing each other. Pleasantly surprised by this care, which she had so lacked since the time her father sold her, Bella answered the man that he should not worry about her, everything would be fine, and she noted to herself that she was not at all against such care, and her thoughts went to the past. In fact, the world of the dead, where she found herself as a child, became her home. The girl remembered very well her emotions and tears when this terrible world first opened before her eyes. Holding little Bella by the head, the cardinal whispered in an ominous tone for her to look down, where the world of the dead was visible with all its most terrible horrors. The cardinal pushed the girl to the very edge of this terrible abyss, after which he said that only one person managed to return from that world, who was their empress. He has already sent a lot of little girls there, in the hope of learning about that world and receiving its power. Grabbing Bella by the shoulders, the cardinal said that no one had returned from there, and now he wants to try to send there the one who was cared for in the same way as the empress. And suddenly, he abruptly lifted the crying child, where Bella, trying to escape from these tenacious hands of death, called for help. She was already hanging right above the black abyss when Mordecai said that if she returned, she would become as strong as the empress. And instead of saying goodbye, the man added that he would wait here for now and beg the girl to return. After which the cardinal unclenched his fingers, and Bella quickly flew into the bottomless black pit of death. The last thing she heard from the world of the living was the words of a man who said that if she managed to return, she might even take revenge on him. Meanwhile, a round-the-clock guard was organized at the fault, where the warriors of the north stood guard first. Looking at the monstrous hole in matter and space, Aiden said out loud that it was a stupid idea to open the door to the world of the dead voluntarily. His reasoning was interrupted by the approach of a cardinal, who offered to share one interesting fact with the man. Seeing that he had captured Aiden's attention, Mordecai said that in the world of the dead, time stands still. This made a proper impression on the younger brother of the Northern Duke, who opened his mouth in surprise. And the cardinal continued, saying that you can spend only 10 minutes there, but here people will have time to live their whole lives. Aiden's feeling of surprise quickly gave way to skepticism, and he asked how the cardinal knew this. But their entertaining conversation was interrupted by the appearance of Nicholas and his warriors. Seeing the Duke of the East, Aiden literally hissed that now it was the North's turn to guard the rift, and that the East needed to get out of here. His furious outburst was interrupted by the cardinal, who said that there was no need to draw hasty conclusions. Where the Duke of the East came here not for guard duty, but to be the first to make a foray into the world of the dead. And now Nicholas was already entering another world, telling his people to stay here and receiving in response a wish for a speedy and safe return. And the annoyed Aiden had no choice but to quietly continue to be angry with someone whom he did not even consider to be a person. Some kind of irresistible rage overcame him more and more. Finding himself in the world of the dead, Nicholas noted that the longer you are here, the more your perception becomes distorted. He spurred his horse and galloped forward. There were no roads or directions in this terrible world. He felt like his entire skin was burning, as if he had just drunk poison. Suddenly, a movement behind him caught Nicholas's attention, forcing him to turn around. And at the same moment, a powerful discharge swept next to the horse, leaving a deep furrow. Nicholas quickly turned around and prepared to repel the attack, but froze when he saw that the source of the lightning was none other than Aiden. He sat on his horse with a crazy expression on his face and looked at the Eastern Duke with the same crazy look, clutching a sword sparkling with lightning in his hand. And Bella visited the Palace of the South, Duke Louis, in the company of her little maid. Standing opposite the table at which the Duke, as usual, sat, the girl asked permission to ask a question. And having received this, Bella asked to explain to her what happened to the Southern Army and where all those knights who fought next to her against the dead in a silent war went. Hearing the question, Louis lowered his head guiltily, lowering his gaze. And after being silent for a while, the man said that the consequences of that war were no less terrible than the war itself, and those glorious knights remained in the South to resolve all internal conflicts. And then Bella expressed her understanding of why the squad contains only young and completely inexperienced fighters, to which the Duke said that despite this, they are all successors of noble families and families. Then Louis handed the girl a list of names of the knightly order, where she was convinced that indeed all the warriors of the South were from the nobility. However, these were all children that no one needed, third, fourth, adopted sons of families, just a crowd of abandoned boys. There is very little hope that anyone will return alive from such a campaign, which is precisely why they, unnecessary to anyone, were sent to war. A picture of the past suddenly appeared in the girl's thoughts, where her father did something similar to her, but in an even more terrible way. All these soldiers were essentially the same breed as her, the same abandoned souled offspring of their families. After listening to everything that the girl had just said about abandoned children, Louis said sadly that she could do everything, but not treat them like abandoned children. He appointed her to lead the army of the South not in order to abandon anyone, and except for her, the man has no one else to trust. Bella looked at the paper in her hands with a soft and kind gaze, saying that the Duke's order was law for her, and she will do everything possible to return the South to its former glory and greatness. After some time, the girl was in the training hall of the Southern Army. Standing in front of the fighters, Bella told them to step back a little, but the crowd of men did not even think of moving from the place where they stood, where one of those who stood in front suddenly told the girl that they could not recognize her as commander, to which Bella immediately replied that the Duke himself appointed her, and therefore by not obeying her orders, they thereby disobey the order of the Duke. Looking at the crowd of stubborn people, Bella said that the warriors must first of all follow the orders of the Duke and Empress. But seeing that she could not reach them, the girl asked about the reason why they refused to obey her, to which she immediately received the answer that the warriors did not trust her. A man maintaining a dialogue with Bella said on behalf of everyone that she is too young, no one knows her origin, and he finished by noting that she was also a woman. In the icy tone characteristic of her in such situations, Bella asked her interlocutor what to do now. Taking this tone as a sign of insolence, the man took a fighting stance and grabbed his sword, saying that he did not intend to tolerate this. Shouting that the girl could complain to the Duke about this incident, the soldier rushed at her, drawing his weapon, to which Bella replied that she did not need any complaints because she had arms and legs. And in the world of the dead, Aiden, putting his sparkling sword to Nicholas's throat, hissed for him to get out of his way, to which Nicholas replied that Aiden's words meant nothing to him even in their world, let alone where they were now. But their confrontation in this world was not destined to end in a colorful duel, as suddenly stones began to fall everywhere and the earth began to shake. Looking around in fear, the man, having significantly tamed his ardor, asked what was happening. And Nicholas suddenly took off his horse and rushed off somewhere, provoking a question from his recent opponent as to where he was going. But without receiving an explanation, Aiden found nothing better than to follow Nicholas. And soon the men stopped on the edge of the cliff. Nicholas could not believe what he had just seen in front of him, and neither could his careless companion. It was a real castle, rising alone among the unsightly landscapes of this world. The men noted the lack of entrance gates and ditches, as well as the bizarre design of the building. But the biggest strange thing was that the castle was located where only the dead live. After analyzing all the information, Nicholas finally came to a single explanation for the phenomenon. This castle belonged to the king of the dead. While Nicholas was analyzing, Aiden noted out loud that the earthquake was starting again. And suddenly, hordes of dead people quickly headed out of the castle towards the men. For some reason, these dead people did not have eyes, which did not in the least prevent them from orienting themselves perfectly in space. The spectacle was, of course, non-trivial, and provoked exclamations from both men corresponding to their facial expressions. This first foray into the world of the dead was completed, and Nicholas was already sitting in his office, thinking about everything that had happened. It seemed very strange to him what he saw in that world, where it seemed that the castle was producing the dead, and the landscape around them was so confusing that they had to wander for a very long time before they could return. The Duke of the East voiced the finale of his thoughts, saying that that world was significantly different from theirs. And Felton, who was standing nearby, said that another strange thing was that from the moment they entered the world of the dead until the moment they left, only 15 minutes passed. Such a statement was extremely unexpected for Nicholas, where, according to his calculations, at least 3 hours had passed. And then he remembered the cardinal's accidentally heard words that time flows differently in the world of the dead, where the Eastern Duke concluded that apparently these words were true. His thoughts were interrupted by Felton, who said that there was another news story where Miss Bella attacked one of the soldiers of the Southern Army, and, as they say, he received serious injuries. What he heard shocked Nicholas even more than the previous information about the passage of time. Instantly rising to his feet, Nicholas literally shouted the question of whether everything was okay with Bella herself, to which his assistant fearfully replied that the girl was not injured, only the soldier was injured. Nicholas did not know how to react to such a statement, where it turned out that Bella acted as some kind of rowdy. At the same time, in Bella's chambers, the little maid delightedly recounted to her mistress everything that she had heard about Bella's fight with one of the soldiers, saying that he sneakily threw sand in her eyes, and the generous mistress only hit him with the hilt of her sword. And pleased with her own story no less than with Bella's action, Evie concluded that finally these boors had gotten their way. To which the girl, modestly sipping tea, replied that these were just rumors. In fact, the soldier himself slipped and fell. This statement from the mistress greatly upset the little maid, who disappointedly asked if the girl was joking. And Bella, smiling, replied that rumors always present everything in a distorted form, with which Evie, of course, agreed. Taking another sip, the girl thought that there was very little left before going to the world of the dead, and the Knights of the South were nothing of themselves. At that moment, Evie took out an envelope, which she, overwhelmed with emotions, had forgotten about, and said that an invitation to dinner had arrived from the cardinal, after which the maid read the text of the invitation to the amazed girl, where the cardinal expressed the hope that Bella would join this official event. It was not polite to refuse, and as evening approached, the girl arrived at the place appointed for dinner. As soon as she went inside, Mordecai joyfully greeted her and invited her to sit at the table. Without keeping her waiting, Bella walked up to the table and chose a seat between the cardinal and Nicholas. As she sat down, Nicholas glanced sideways at the girl without saying a word. Bella gave the man a gentle look in response, which apparently was not noticed by him. As soon as the girl sat down at the table, Mordecai said that he had heard rumors about how she was establishing relations with the Knightly Order of the South. However, Bella, who did not enjoy communicating with the cardinal, instead of answering, asked for what purpose she was invited here. Laughing, Mordecai said that the girl was behaving very harshly towards him, but he did not leave the girl's question unanswered, saying that the time for the first trip to the world of the dead was approaching, and he invited Bella to lead it. Bella assumed that either the cardinal or the empress herself could do something similar, so she took what was said quite calmly. But such news did not leave Aiden and Nicholas indifferent, and of course it did not leave them differently due to the different characters of the men. And Mordecai, making the next attachment, told the girl to agree to lead the detachment and lead the north and east. After thinking a little, Bella suddenly asked the cardinal if his words were in order, to which the man replied that of course they were, but in this case the order would not apply without the girl's consent. The Marquis of the North, Anthony Morgan, stood in front of the cardinal, who was seated comfortably on the sofa, and the cardinal asked if it was his doing, a widespread rumor that Bella had crippled the knight, to which the Marquis replied that he needed it, after which Mordecai suddenly asked directly whether the Marquis was planning to try to kill his daughter again, and without waiting for an answer from the man dumbfounded by such directness, he immediately added that he was ready to offer his help in this, where he has the opportunity to organize a good trap for the girl. All this flashed through the cardinal's thoughts in a split second after he told Bella about commanding the entire army, after which the man noted that recently the Duke of the East and the brother of the Northern Duke had already visited the world of the dead. With noticeable boredom, Mordecai noted that they had talked about the strange landscape in that world. Not understanding what all this talk was about, Bella displeasedly asked what this should change for her, to which the cardinal explained that first, the army should get used to the world of the dead and deal with easier opponents. And when asked who the cardinal meant by easy opponents, the man replied that those who do not have vision. And Bella immediately remembered the events of the past in the War of the South against the dead. Where these blind dead fought very well, I left no chance to the one they attacked. She and the entire army of the South had a very difficult time in those battles. But in the end, victory was won, but many Southern warriors paid for it with their lives. And the cardinal continued, saying that the South had been fighting this type of dead for a long time and had to study them well, where now the army of the South would have a chance to wash away its shame at the first skirmish with the dead when the rift opened. Here the girl had nothing to answer. The army of the South really showed itself worse than ever. Having finished his speech and laid the trap, the man looked straight at the girl, thinking about what she would choose, death or shame. But Bella, without any hesitation, suddenly said that it would be an honor for the South to be the first to go on a campaign, but in return she would have one request to the cardinal. This unexpected move interested the man, and he asked what the request was. Without tormenting the man with anticipation, the girl said that she was just asking to change the date of the hike, moving it up by 2 days. Neither Nicholas nor Aidan could understand the meaning of this petition. The cardinal was surprised by the simplicity of the girl's request, and of course agreed to such a profitable exchange. As night fell, Nicholas and Bella met in the garden as usual. The man showed interest in why the girl asked to postpone the hike for 2 days, to which Bella smilingly replied that given enough time, her father would have time to prepare a new trap, to which the man stated with disappointment that Bella knew about the trap and still allowed herself to be driven into a corner. The girl inquired as to whether she had created any difficulties for the East, which was also preparing for the campaign, and Nicholas, without hiding, answered that there really were difficulties. But when the girl tried to apologize, Nicholas said that no apology was required, since the more difficult the task, the more interesting it was for him to watch Bella. Bella then asked the man what kind of person she seemed to him to be. After thinking a little, Nicholas replied that he could describe the girl with the word strange. Laughing, Bella asked if the man thought at all before speaking, and Nicholas immediately apologized for his words, where the reaction of the Duke of the East greatly amused the girl. And Nicholas suddenly said that he believed in her, but was also very worried that she might get hurt. Experiencing the most pleasant feelings from this care, Bella responded by saying that she also really hoped that Nicholas would not suffer. And suddenly, making a serious expression on her face, the girl said that for this, the Duke must now listen to her carefully, after which the man turned all attention and Bella began to talk about the hike. 2 days later, the little maid was helping her mistress with her uniform, when the Duke of the South suddenly burst into the room and loudly asked if the rumors that Bella was going on a solo foray into the world of the dead were true. Evie answered the question, saying that this is the purest truth, where her mistress really does not take any of the knights with her, and today she goes alone to the world of the dead. With some notes of fatherly concern, Lewis shouted that no one had dared to do this before, to which Bella simply replied that everything happens for the first time. Such carelessness greatly upset the man, who said that no one except Bella would dare to do this, and it would be difficult for her there. And the girl, laughing, replied that in fact it was a great honor to become the only one in history. But the Southern Duke did not appreciate the humor, saying that now was not the time for jokes, but it would be worth thinking about how to survive in that hell alone. At this time, Evie approached Lewis and asked if he was really so worried about her mistress. To which the old man shouted in anger that that was the point, that he was very worried. After that, Bella herself approached the Southern Duke, adjusting the award emblazoned on his chest, and having finished with the order, the girl said in a calm but confident voice that the Duke should simply believe in her. The girl's smooth, melodic, and quite convincing voice played its role, where the man calmed down, said that he was giving up and would try to understand Bella. To which the girl smiled, made a slight bow of her head, and said that her victory would be the victory of the Southern Duke and the entire South. And now the fearless girl was already approaching the rift, where the cardinal himself was waiting for her. He greeted the girl with the words that the whole empire and he personally were pinning their hopes on her. Without saying a word in response, Bella decisively headed straight towards the rift, where, finding herself between the world of the living and the world of the dead, the girl suddenly stopped. A crowd of the dead had already gathered right in front of her, and Bella, with a calm movement, threw off the cape from her shoulders, which would only get in the way in battle, after which she pulled out her sword from its sheath and prepared for a fierce battle with the dead. In the kingdom, there is a book about what is on the other side of the rift, which is called the biography of Empress Susan Doherty. It described that at some point, creatures that the Empress had never seen before fell out of the rift. Susan was the last of the Doherty family. But undeterred by the complete interruption of the race, she took her weapon and stepped inside the rift. Waiting inside were 5 kings of the dead, long dead and buried, who called Susan. Not at all afraid of those who appeared before her, the girl asked who they were, to which one of the kings of the dead replied that they were the ancestors of the living, and the place where the girl ended up was their new world. The dead kings explained to the girl that their thirst for rule could not be quenched even by death. That's why they rule even in the world of the dead. But this world alone is not enough for them, and the kings want to take over the world of the living. To which Susan said that the world of the living belongs only to the living, and the dead have no place there. But the kings did not agree with this, declaring that the world of the living belonged to them. As before, they were simply expelled from there by time. But they did not leave that world as an inheritance to the living. The dead kings made a promise to return to the world of the living and restore their former glory. The first dead people to appear did not have eyes, but they heard perfectly and rushed straight at the victim, destroying it as soon as the latter made even the slightest sound. And these dead were commanded by one of the dead kings. The empress, when confronted with this king, asked why his people were deprived of eyes. To which the king replied that these people were filled with regrets for their actions, and therefore are now deprived of the opportunity to look at the worlds. Then Susan asked why these dead men would attack as soon as they heard the slightest sound. And the king explained that it was their curse and punishment to experience what they regret. After which the empress asked another question, "What do all these people and their king regret?" To which he replied that the girl knew the answer to this question. And then Susan cut the king of the dead with one move of her sword, where at the same moment a shining heart fell out of the king, which she wanted to touch with the tip of her sword. But the king was not completely destroyed. His essence in the form of a black shadow grabbed the heart and disappeared. This king, having taken his heart, hid in the most distant parts of his castle. One of the blind dead tried to attack Bella, who was already inside the rift, and he was immediately defeated with one precise blow, after which the girl noted that the closer she gets to the castle, the more dead people are on her way. Her plan to slip into the castle without making a fuss failed, as the path was too narrow and the dead would definitely hear her. Suddenly, an arrow as black as night stuck into one of the rocks, attracting the attention of a crowd of dead people, at one end of which a gold ring hung on a string. The girl almost immediately realized what had just happened. The entire crowd of dead people blocking her path rushed to the place where the arrow made a noise as it stuck into the rock, thanks to which the path was cleared, and Bella quickly moved forward. Raising her head, the girl saw a man standing on the edge of a high cliff. It was the Eastern Duke, clutching a bow in his hand, who fired the saving arrow. The girl noted to herself that Nicholas even managed to help her, thinking that he was very kind. Having given the man a sign of respect, Bella, without wasting any time, rushed towards the castle, where one of the kings of the dead was supposed to be. And the assistant to the Eastern Duke said that at this rate all the glory and all the honors would go to the south. To which Nicholas replied that the troops of the East were not going to conquer the castle of the dead king. This statement greatly surprised Felton, and he asked his master why they had come here then and where they were going.